Well, a hearty good afternoon. It is 3:06. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson all week. Thank you to Pamela Furr for spending some time with you from noon until 3, where I normally am.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And she's still here.
I'm still here. I can't leave you.
I love that. You're not waiting on me. You're waiting on Robert Swope.
Well,
I know
he's
what
my
you're
buddy
doing.
sometimes.
Sometimes. Well, we've got a lot to talk about Swope, with, or about, to.
Well, the stadium deal.
Stadium deal. His decision to not be a part of the circus that reappointed Justin Jones.
Yeah.
The fact that the council is going to stay at 40 for at least until the 2027 election cycle. There's a lot going on.
All right.
A lot happening. So he'll be along.
Well, I'll leave you alone.
Well, no, you're good. You're good. You can stick around as long as you want. You know we're family.
Did you bring any bourbon?
I did not.
Then I'm out.
I am. Wait a minute. Hold on. You were supposed to bring the bourbon.
I'm bringing it Friday.
All right.
So I'm going to bring Old Weller Antique.
Not that I would sip any before a show.
Oh, no.
No.
Or before a newscast.
No,
You have to sip it on the show.
I would chug it on the show.
No, you don't chug bourbon. Come on. What is wrong with you?
Pamela's going to give us the bourbon etiquette.
Yes, please.
What are you
And
doing
you
there?
know this.
Do I do the little pinky?
You don't have to do the pinky, but you do have to nose it. You have to smell it. Nose it.
Give a little.
Give a little
Do a little
sniff.
something.
Yeah.
Let it
So
speak to
anyway,
me.
I'm going to bring that because I tasted that this weekend.
It's a nutty pecan.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was
That's
so
it, yeah.
good.
Little glass swirl.
I'm not even listening to you guys. It was so delicious. And yes, there was a little caramel, a little vanilla.
It must be good because you've been talking. I mean, privately, you've been talking to me about it. You sent me a picture of it.
I even sent him a picture.
So this is the best bourbon I've ever had ever.
Best bourbon I've ever had ever. Yeah, it's really good. And so we're going to try that.
How
So,
old?
Antique
How
Weller.
old was it?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't know.
Because
Antique means what? 4 years?
Well, I had someone that's smarter about bourbons than I tell me that it must be pretty old because they don't make that style
They don't.
bottle anymore.
They don't.
So
They don't.
I don't know.
And so, and it was given to me, and so I feel so blessed to have it, but I thought I would share a little taste of
Oh,
it
you're very sweet.
with you. Well, I mean,
You're sweet.
thank you.
Yeah, that's the end of that sentence. Pamela Furr is sweet.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't feel awkward. I
I'm
don't
going
know
to
what
move
do
on.
with that.
I'm going to
Thank
say
you.
it's episode 322 of My Time With You on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's Wednesday. It's April 19. It is 2023. Hopefully we have a better day than we did yesterday from a traffic perspective. And my goodness gracious, we watched it in real time, but it is difficult to put into words. And Mac Morey did a great job of doing it. Some of the devastation that was caused by a multi-vehicle crash on I-65 in Robertson County. One person dead after being rear-ended by a tractor-trailer, and that tractor-trailer ran over the victim's vehicle. So we cross our fingers and hope that we don't have that sort of melee or carnage. We never want it, but yesterday it was just awful on the roadways, and I don't know that I fully appreciated how bad it was on I-65, even as Mac Morey and others were reporting on it. So we'll do our dead level best to keep your traffic woes to a minimum as we sub in for Brian Wilson and The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Super Text line is open, and the phone lines are open as well. I don't know how to continue having a discussion about what's happening in the Tennessee legislature without talking about the Bullhorn Trio. I do not call them the Tennessee Three, and I'll say this every time someone brings it up. Johnny Cash had the Tennessee Three backing him up back in the day. These are not them. This is the Bullhorn Trio. The Tennessee Three, it's too nicey nice. We have completely lost our minds in the level of adulation that these individuals are receiving from any political party. It is ridiculous how the mainstream media is willing to, and this really isn't about these three knuckleheads that have never done anything for their constituencies, to my knowledge, to a positive result. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm willing to listen. Unlike these three people. But the Bullhorn Trio have now been invited to meet Sloppy Joe at the White House. These are non-serious people using the death of children to raise their political profile. And it is wrong. It would be and is wrong if a Republican does it. It would be and is wrong if an independent does it. And it is wrong when Democrats do it. None of them introduced legislation. I think Gloria Johnson was late to glomming herself and co-sponsoring one piece of legislation regarding guns. Now they're introducing plenty of pieces of legislation that are either unconstitutional or are going nowhere in a Republican-led General Assembly. Secondarily, somehow, and it infuriates me how some people are swallowing this hook, line, and sinker, somehow they've managed to take what they did to disrupt the democratic process and claim that it was Republicans disrupting democracy. There was an op-ed piece in the Tennessean. I don't even know if it was an op-ed piece. Angela Latham wrote the piece, so I guess it was op-ed. No, she's a national person, I think, with Gannett or whatever organization owns the Tennessean. The headline, "A Symbolic Attack, How the First Amendment Was Front and Center During the Expulsion Debate." In the midst of the demonstrations at the state capitol, hundreds of protesters packed into the confines of the old building, creating walls of shoulders and walls of sound as they chanted their support for the three Democratic lawmakers facing expulsion that day. The ceilings rattled with chants. The floor shook with the stomping as the crowd, undulating like an oversized snake, coiled and hissed with each vote broadcast on the television monitors. And on and on and on the narrative goes. And eventually in this op-ed piece, we are told that potentially the First Amendment rights of the three individuals who were speaking out of order were violated. And to that, I think to myself, on what planet does every citizen of the state of Tennessee have a First Amendment right to disrupt the House of Representatives while in session, to take over the well of the House of Representatives in the General Assembly and make a statement, a political statement? Because if Gloria Johnson or Justin Jones or Justin Pearson are out of order, you and I would be just as out of order in doing so, but no more so out of order. Afton, and I don't know if this is how you pronounce this person's name, a local activist and demonstrator, said, "It's a great First Amendment argument. We have three democratically elected officials who used their First Amendment rights on the floor, supporting others using their First Amendment rights, and yet they're being expelled. It's not right." You know what's not right, Afton Bean? And I'll spell it. AFTYNBEHN, a local activist and demonstrator. What's sad is that you have no understanding of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States whatsoever. At least based on that comment. The op-ed piece that I read yesterday then goes on to quote David Hudson, a Belmont University law professor and a First Amendment expert. And David, if you're listening to the show, I would love to talk to you because I have a hard time believing that I have more understanding of the First Amendment than a First Amendment expert, but apparently I do. David said, "Bond v. Floyd is an extraordinary case that sets strong First Amendment precedent for legislators even from 57 years ago." This is what they're doing, and this is the reason I'm talking about it. They're talking about a case involving Julian Bond from Georgia, in which he was a newly elected representative and he was blocked from taking his elected seat because he had a particular position on the Vietnam War. Okay? So that went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that obviously you can't block someone from being seated in their position as an elected official because they hold a viewpoint that is contrary to the majority of the body. That's not at all what happened 2 weeks ago. And before our very eyes, and I know that some of you, I join you, that I am sick to death of talking about this. I agree with you. But friends, if we don't talk about this, if we don't in real time correct the record, they are changing the record as we speak. They are attempting to change the history of what happened just 2 weeks ago as we talk today. And I promise you, if they can, they will get away with it. They are attempting to rewrite history to note that it was the Republicans violating the First Amendment. It was the Republicans out of order. They were in the wrong, and the 3 Democrats were in the right, despite the fact that in the immediate aftermath of all of this happening, they admitted that they broke the rules. Lost in any and all of this is the idea that we have to have rules of decorum, especially in our elected bodies. Otherwise, we have anarchy. And so they are just bending over backwards to try to find some sort of constitutional case to say that the First Amendment of these 3 individuals was being violated. The reason this is so important is because I promise you, these 3 individuals and the manner in which they took over the body and the manner in which they won the public relations of this event has become a template for other Democrats in other state legislatures who are also in the minority to run roughshod over the majority, ignoring the will of the majority of the people in those individual states. Absent from this conversation is that the vast majority of the people of Tennessee agree with me and you and other conservatives and libertarians with regard to gun control or with regard to my rights per the Second Amendment or with regard to how to handle these situations, and certainly with regard to rules and decorum on the floor of the House of Representatives. But no one in the mainstream media and no one at the Tennessean and no one at Fox 17 and no one at News Channel 5, and I could go on, seems to recognize that the will of the people is being done by the very presence of the Republicans who are standing in the well doing it. And sadly, instead of understanding, and this is where I'm going to point my wag my talk radio host finger at the Republicans here, instead of recognizing who the true enemies here are, instead of understanding that the enemy of the people, in this case, primarily the shooter that committed the evil atrocity, secondarily, the motivations behind said evil atrocity, thirdly, the individuals that chose to make it about themselves and to break the rules. Instead of that, now I have Republicans all over the state of Tennessee arguing amongst themselves, wagging their fingers at other Republicans. You're not a real Republican. You're not a real Republican. You like red flag laws. You like red flag laws. Can we not for once stand together united against this nonsense? Can you hold off on your infighting and telling me who's the pure Republican and who's the pure conservative and who's not for a second? I hope so. The future of the Republic depends on it. I believe that. 615-737-9986 is the telephone number. You can also reach us via the super text line. For example, 3725 writes in, you can't be further from the truth, 3:19 p.m. segment. Okay, a little tip on how to properly engage on the super text line. If you want me to understand what I just said a lot of words in a little amount of time, and so I don't really understand where I'm not speaking the truth and what you disagree with. But if you illuminate me, I'll try to respond. I don't expect that everyone will agree with everything that I say. As a matter of fact, I think it is, if you agree with me 100% of the time, then, well, let's just put it this way. I have issues. So I don't know of anybody that agrees with me 100% of the time. But I'd love to talk to you, whether you agree or disagree. As a matter of fact, disagreement goes to the front of the line. That's the way I do things, even as I sub in for Brian Wilson on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN this Wednesday. Back in a moment.
Fighting in Sudan continues, plus the mayors from the Tennessee's four largest cities send a open letter to Governor Lee. We take a look at that, 3:30 right here, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Mac Morey. It's 3:25. Coming up in about 5 minutes or so, Metro Councilman Robert Swope in studio with us. I'll finish up these thoughts. I don't want to tangle him, although I am certain that he has some thoughts about the Bullhorn Trio. I don't want to tangle him up in all of this. Larry writes in and says, as you were leaving last week, don't know if you got the text, but you're right all along. They should have censored them if they had no. You know what? I'm not playing the game of I told you so, but I got burned by people calling me spineless because I said at the beginning, if you don't have the ability to see this to the end, don't do it to begin with. Censure them, make them non-legislators for the rest of the session. Make it plain that, hey, Gloria and the two this was my plan, and you can go back and listen to the tape. This was 2.5 weeks ago on my radio show. You explain to them, for the rest of this session, nobody sees you. You're invisible. You don't get committee assignments, you don't get your card key into the building, and you don't get called on for the session for what you have done. Instead, we played a game that we couldn't finish. We bluffed, and the bluff got called by the Metro Council and by the Shelby County folks who decided to vote the two Justins back in, and they couldn't even manage to expel Gloria on the vote itself. So I'm not playing that game necessarily, but thank you for noticing that, Larry, because it is true. That's what I said, and I was fearful that the public relations coup that would become this issue would give these individuals a platform that they most certainly do not deserve. And looky here. Now they're going to the White House. And yeah, I know it's Joe Biden. And yeah, I know he won't remember meeting with them tomorrow, but it still chaps my hide. James is in Temple. Hey, James, how are you?
All right, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, James. Thanks for asking.
Hey, we have what's so strange about thugs visiting the White House, for God's sakes?
Well, that's true. I remember when they were selling the Lincoln bedroom in the Clinton years, right?
I mean, birds of a feather flock together, correct?
I guess so.
This visit from Kamala Ding Dong a few weeks ago to Tennessee, what did that accomplish, other than spending a whole lot of taxpayer money?
That was, you know what that was? That was Kamala checking a couple of boxes. She had to. She checked the race card box. She politicized the murder of little kids. She did not meet with the heroes of the Metro Nashville Police Department. She, to my knowledge, did not meet with the families. But she did give a passionate speech about race relations in America.
It's comical. I mean, it's sad, but comical.
Yeah, it's a joke.
You're doing a good job, Matt. I love you.
Thank you, James. I appreciate that. I'm just holding the seat down while Brian Wilson is off this week. He's back on Monday. I'm back to my normal time slot. Ricky's in Watertown. Hey, Ricky.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, Ricky. Hope you are.
Is someone finally going to give them the correct title? They're not the Tennessee Three. They're more like the Three Stooges. Although I am having difficulty figuring out which one's Larry and Curly and Moe. One of them may be Shemp. I mean, that's the title they deserve because them with the foghorns look like something the Three Stooges would do.
My favorite moment in all of this, because you have to laugh to keep from crying, my favorite moment in all of this was Gloria complaining that she couldn't get back into her office because her card key wouldn't work because she needed to get her motorized scooter. And she had a place to go over the weekend and could not go there and could not do what she wanted to do because she did not have her motorized scooter. And then several days after that, there was some sort of march going on, and I think this was in Shelby County, to march for Justin Pearson. And there was Gloria in her little motorized scooter, just trucking on down the that image, it will live with me forever. And that's all I have to say about that. It's 3:30. Robert Swope coming up. We're going to find him some headphones, and we're going to get him on the radio next.
3:30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 84 degrees, a nice sunny day in Nashville. Expecting a sunny week until we get to this weekend. A cold front looking ahead and some possible storms. Also looking at weather right here, a fire weather watch in effect starting tomorrow at 11 a.m. over to 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Again, weather and traffic coming up. The battle for control of Sudan is intensifying with millions caught in the crossfire. Claire Bauer.
Sudan's capital, Khartoum, the scene of fierce conflict Wednesday, with reports of dead bodies in the streets and heavy gunfire, despite a truce that had been agreed to by the country's two warring generals. The paramilitary Rapid Support Force is signalling it's ready to observe a second ceasefire. The Sudan Doctors Union saying more than half the hospitals in the capital have been bombed out of service as the number of dead and wounded continues to climb.
And here in Tennessee, a letter from the mayors of Nashville, Shelby County, Knoxville, and Chattanooga say they're encouraged by Governor Lee's recent support for stricter gun laws.
The memo says the time has come for sympathy and support to turn into action. They want background checks at the point of sale. They don't shy away from the term red flag laws, where police and family would intervene when someone poses an extreme risk of harming others or themselves. Also, a ban on high-capacity magazines, 3 of the 10 recommendations total. The mayors say Tennessee has the 12th highest rate of gun deaths in the country for the past 4 years, based on data from the National Center for Health Statistics. The memo was addressed to state leaders, including Governor Bill Lee, House Speaker Cameron Sexton, and Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And staying here in the volunteer state, News 2 says that every Murfreesboro police officer is expected to be equipped with an automated external defibrillator, or an AED. Cardiac arrest is the cause for thousands of deaths in the United States, and this equipment should be able to help save lives. As a part of their in-service training, Murfreesboro officers undergo CPR and AED training every 2 years. According to the police department, the goal is to issue all uniformed officers an AED by the end of the year. And that is the latest news. Weather's on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up, because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have 2 things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
This is The Drive. No Brian Wilson this week. Matt Murphy in for Brian. I'm normally here from noon until 3. Pamala Furr holding down those 3 hours for the week, and we thank Pamela for that, obviously. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We are also on Talk TV. That would be YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Thank you for participating in that. We finally got somebody in the studio that's worth looking at, and that person is Councilman Robert Swope. Before he gets to speak, though, I've got Representative Scott Desjardins at 5:30 today, Mike Sparks at 4:30, Cameron Smith of the Tennessean will stop by at 4 o'clock, all covering a variety of different issues involving national, state, and local politics. And then there is Councilman Robert Swope, one of the first and finest local leaders that I met when I came to Nashville.
Hi, Matt.
Snappy dresser, all-around good guy, loves cars, puts up with crap that I could never in my life put up with. Hello, Robert.
Oh, my God. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Tired. Been a long couple of weeks.
Yeah, I imagine so. So let's start with this because I think it's the easiest thing to start with. So the Metro Council decides that they're going to explain to me the process because I've heard a couple of different things. They had to suspend their own rules in order to get Jones back as quickly as they did. Is that not right?
Yes, they did, only because
So swing a little closer. Yeah,
any resolution or ordinance has to be filed timely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which could be anywhere between 7 or 9 days before it's actually heard on the floor. Well, they wanted to do this instantly, so they had to suspend the rules just to get it onto the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And it passed unanimously because it passed without certain people being in the room, right?
Correct.
Why did you decide just to you came in, you were present and accounted for, and then you left?
You're right. I did.
Why?
I didn't have a choice. Starting Saturday, I guess, and if you remember, that was Easter Sunday. So I'll start with Easter Sunday because it's kind of the pinnacle of all this. I took maybe 16 phone calls, 2 of which were death threats, on Easter Sunday. I am the guy that when, my phone rings, I answer it.
Sure.
I don't send you to voicemail. If I'm alive and breathing, I'm going to take your call because I want to deal with your problem or your issue right now. Well, I had the same kid call me 4 times at Easter dinner with my family. And I told him I was at dinner. He's welcome to call me back in an hour. Well,
Sure.
He called me 3 more times before I kind of got indignant with him. But make a long story short, I never once said I was a yes or a no vote. Never. In fact, my party line that I said to everyone that would listen was, I will take what you've said under consideration. Thank you for your call. Well, about 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon, the day of this vote, somebody posted on TikTok that I was an absolute no. Now, I know it was at 1 o'clock because between 1 and 4, I had well over 300 phone calls, 800 texts, and about 2,000 emails. Out of those phone calls, I'm going to say 60 or 70 of them threatened my wife's life, my life. I can take care of myself, but I can't defend my wife when I'm not around her. I was left in a position where if I voted yes, I wouldn't be voting my conscience. I probably wouldn't be voting for my constituents' conscience either. Justin Jones has been arrested 3 times. He was one of the people that helped burn City Hall to the ground.
I mean, I've seen photographs of him stomping on Metro Nashville police cars.
There's video.
There's video evidence of him grabbing somebody in a truck and looks like he's beating the hell out of that person.
Correct. General Funk has refused to prosecute. He got elected by his constituents in District 52. God bless him. But that doesn't mean I have to support you. So rather than vote no, I left the room. It was my prerogative to do so. There was no way on God's green earth my no vote was going to stop his being readmitted to the House of Representatives. So why would I risk my family's safety just to make a point?
I just have a hard time believing that if a Democrat on the Metro Council in Nashville had been threatened in the way that you've been threatened.
Oh, they'd be screaming.
That this would not
They'd
be
be screaming to the rooftops.
a national news story.
They'd be screaming to the rooftops. Listen, God bless Brian Wilson. As I'm driving to council for this special called meeting on Justin Jones, Brian Wilson's saying, turn this around. Can you imagine if Robert Swope went into the city council with a bullhorn, what they would do to him?
I heard him say that.
I howled in my truck.
Is it not true?
Exactly. No, they would have thrown me out the window off the second floor, period.
Because rules are for thee and not for me when it comes to the
Correct. And we do have rules of decorum. You said earlier, and I overheard on the drive over here, that, listen, the state legislatures have missed the boat on this. I completely concur. They should have literally put them in a corner for the next 2 years. Period. No committees, no privileges, no anything. Censure them, because what they did was absolutely wrong. We as a society have rules. We have laws. We have agreed upon structures that either we follow or we live in true anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it? Because there's no middle ground. It's one or the other. And what they did was they took the rules of decorum of the House of Representatives and threw them out the window. Now, that deserves punishment. Does it deserve to martyr them? No.
Well, and I was all about it. If you can explain to me a way to expel these three individuals where they won't be marched back into the body as conquering heroes, I'm willing to hear it. But
there's no way. Obviously,
there's no way, because their constituencies, sadly, and this is what we're dealing with. And you know this well, Robert, because you're a student of history. The American system of government is not perfect. It's just the best thing we got going.
Yes.
But one of the imperfections is if the voters don't care about the rules of law, if the voters don't care about the rules and the decorum of the body, then they'll just vote them back in.
Correct. We live in a constitutional republic. And granted, I would argue that this constitutional republic is the finest government ever created by humankind in the history of humankind. Is it perfect? No, it's not. But neither is humanity. Is it the closest thing we could possibly get to humanity, to perfection in government, until we start using more than 16% of our brains? I would say yes.
So you chose, and it's sad, and I don't want to overemphasize this point, but I think it merits repeating, that lost in all of this, and you don't hear it from Fox 17, you don't hear it from Phil Williams, you don't hear it from these other folks, you don't hear it in an op-ed from the Tennessean, that a Metro councilman chose to, because he knew the outcome. I mean, obviously, if you were going to be a swing vote, it might have been a different deal. Yeah. But you choose to leave the body for fear of the safety of your family.
Correct.
Rather than vote your conscience in a way that you believe is consistent with your constituents.
You're exactly correct. That's exactly what I just said. And I'll say it again. If I'd have voted my conscience, it would have been a useless vote.
And it would have put a target on your back.
And it would have put a huge target, not on my back, but on my wife's back and on the rest of my family's back. I'm not going to allow that to happen. Not for a part-time gig. It's not going to happen.
How is the, absent this vote, what's the mood of the council right now? They feel like they've pulled one over on the legislature? I mean, they got a court ruling in their favor, right?
How can I explain this? You know how when it's a nice sunny day at recess and the children are outside playing and something really goes good and everybody gets in a good mood?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what the mood in the council is right now. Between that and Wally Deitz's temporary win in the injunction or the reduction of council, let's just say that the majority of that body is jubilant at the moment. Now, that jubilance is probably going to be short-lived, but, I have no choice but to sit there and just smile, and I'm going to go back and build cars, just keep myself sane.
The vote last night, y'all were in session till what?
1 a.m. Yeah, we took up the...
Talk to me about this was the stadium proposal.
Deal, which I think I've been on your show talking about this months ago.
Oh, yeah.
And
you said that you could at the time, if I remember correctly, I don't want to get in front of you, but you said that this is something that you you think you could get behind? That
Oh.
you felt like it was a much better deal than the current deal?
Not only get behind, it
Champion?
I have championed it. It is an unbelievably good deal for the constituency of Davidson County, period. I mean, right now we are on the hook to the Titans for anywhere, and this is a huge disparity in numbers, but anywhere between $600 million and $1.8 billion. That is what we are contractually obligated to at this moment. And that contractual obligation is paid for from the General Obligation Fund, which is taxpayer dollars. It's directly out of yours and my pockets. Now, this new agreement that we are finally past second read on takes that and wipes it away. It eradicates it. We rip it up and throw it in the garbage can. We no longer owe that money at all. Instead, the state puts in $500 million. We put in $760 million, but it doesn't come from the general fund. It doesn't come from taxpayer dollars. It comes from the Sports Authority revenue bonds, which are paid for by 1% hotel tax, 50% of the taxes made in the 63 acres of some of the most expensive undeveloped real estate in America, namely the East Bank, that the city gets back. 50% of those taxes go to pay off our debt on the 760. In other words, no taxpayer dollars are involved in this new deal. Let me repeat that. No taxpayer dollars are involved in this new deal.
Municipalities do have to borrow money based on the revenue expected to be generated.
But the way it's paid back is not through a promised obligation from the taxpayer, from taxes.
But
right?
strictly
From
through
your
the
property
revenues
taxes.
created by the redevelopment of the property.
You're exactly correct. And for you to say no to that, for anybody to say no to that, I got to ask if you actually know how to add 2 plus 2.
I've heard legitimate concern about the state forking over the $500 million. I mean, I understand that there are some, and I admit that I get a little bit of consternation about the state or any municipality involving itself in the building of this structure. But I also did my homework, and I saw the old deal, and the old deal was awful.
Oh, no,
I mean,
it's
you
the worst
educated
deal in
me more
history.
than anybody about the nature of the old deal, and this is a get out of jail free card.
Oh, it's beyond a get out of jail free card. It's get out of jail free. Go and collect $200. Oh, and as a matter of fact, here, collect $2,000 while you're at it. I mean, it's. I will. I'm not John Cooper's biggest fan, but I'm also not his worst detractor either. And I got to give him credit. He went to bat for the citizens of this city, and he struck one hell of a deal. And Amy Skunk Adams acquiesced.
Well, I think they wanted to stay here. I think their hearts are in
They do want to stay
Nashville.
here. And in order to do that, she agreed to cover all maintenance costs, all repair costs, any upgrade costs, any overages in construction. I mean, that could be in the hundreds of millions. We don't even know.
All right,
And it's all on the Titans.
In a second, when we finish up with Robert Swope, I'm going to get him to tell me who's going to be the next mayor of Nashville. We'll do that next on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Don't put me there.
So, who are our front runners? I mean, this
Matt Wilshire.
Wilshire's got the money, right?
Wilshire's.
Is he the most moderate? I don't know anything about him.
Yes. Matt is.
I know Freddie is. He's a Bernie Sanders lefty.
Yes, he is.
Heidi wants to present herself as a moderate. But
She ain't a moderate.
She's
She's
a moderate.
screaming liberal. Heidi is Megan 2.0.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I mean, hopefully she'll stay at a cemetery.
Yeah, should just pick a different place. Yarborough doesn't stand a chance.
No, he doesn't.
Alice Raleigh is the only real
Man, oh man, that Robert Swope gets saved by the music. I was going to demand he tell me who is the next mayor of Nashville, but we've run out of time. How about that? I guess I'll have to have you back on, Swope.
I'll tell you what, Matt. There's a lot of good people running for mayor.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to giggle away.
We'll see how this all plays itself out. I'm going to retain any comment for the time being.
All right. Well, we'll get your full-throated endorsement at some time down the road. Thank you, Robert, for everything.
You got it.
There's Metro Councilor Robert Swope. Cameron Smith coming up in the next hour, as well as Scott Desjardins in hour number 3 of The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Four o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 85 degrees, another balmy day right here in the mid-state. Expecting a couple more nice, sunny, summer-like days before a cold front heads in for the weekend, and we're expecting some possible thunderstorms as well. Complete weather and traffic report coming up just a few minutes away. Here in Tennessee, the State House has passed the bill requiring armed security guards in every public school. That happened today. The bill has already passed the state Senate, and now it heads to Governor Lee's desk. The bill also requires bulletproof windows and doors, along with an increase in mental health resources for private and public schools. Some other Tennessee lawmakers are encouraged and want more done. The mayors of Tennessee's 4 biggest cities are calling for stricter gun laws in a letter to Republican state leaders.
Mayors John Cooper of Nashville, India Kincannon of Knoxville, Lee Harris of Shelby County, and Tim Kelly of Chattanooga say they're encouraged by Governor Lee's recent support for stricter gun laws, but it's time to turn sympathy and support into action. They detailed 10 recommended actions they say are working in other states, including background checks for all gun purchases and require point-of-sale background checks for all gun purchases. Red flag laws allowing police and family members to intervene to keep people at extreme risk of harming someone from possessing guns, and a ban on high-capacity magazines. The memo addressed to state leaders, including Governor Lee, House Speaker Cameron Sexton, and Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And right now we got some breaking news in Nashville. So on Sunday, there was an emergency evacuation because of an odor. It was activated by an airport janitor. This was all, of course, at B&A. And the Nashville International Airport has now reported that that was a can of bear spray that was making that odor that was disturbing people in the airport. And, of course, did cause that emergency evacuation. We'll keep you updated as more information comes out right here on Super Talk. Staying in Tennessee with stories, Tyree Nichols' family has officially filed a lawsuit against the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department and individual officers involved in the beating, which killed him in January. It's a $500 million federal civil lawsuit. And custom officials in Belgium dumped out thousands of cans of Miller High Life beer recently. Sherry Preston pops the top on the so-called champagne of beers to explain why.
If you've got the time. European Union officials did have the time to dump it. Dump what? Miller beer. The reason, the slogan written on every clear bottle of Miller High Life, as highlighted by another old commercial.
For well over 115 years, it's been called the champagne of beer.
France's Champagne Committee takes what can and can't be called champagne very seriously. Strict rules restrict the use of the name, and anything called champagne can only be produced in France. The EU says the Miller cans and the beer were destroyed in an environmentally responsible way.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Brian back on Monday. Today is Wednesday, April 19. It's my episode 322, and I'm pleased to be with you. We'll be here until 7 o'clock, or they pull the plug, whichever comes first. I will not revisit the Bullhorn Trio today unless I just can't help myself or Cameron Smith drags me into that. Now,
nope.
I say that, but I know that we have Mike Sparks coming on at 4:35. You don't know this. If you're still around, Mike's coming on at 4:35 because I'm a little confused about what the Republicans are doing in the General Assembly. More on that coming up in a moment. Plus, Scott Desjardins, I should say, at 5:35 today. And you on the phones as time allows. I also have some incredible Don Lemon audio from a meltdown that Lemon had this morning on CNN as they welcomed a presidential candidate to their studio, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will. I don't think Vivek has – I don't think he's going to lock up the presidency in 2020. Oh, by the way, hey, Cameron. How are you?
Hey,
I should introduce you. Cameron Smith's with us. Normally, Cameron visits me on these Wednesdays during my normal time slot. A lot of times he's filling in for me on my normal time slot as I fill in for Brian. And today, he's just here in his fetching Washington and Lee pastel-y
It's a
flowery.
Hawaiian shirt, man. For those of you that are watching, this is how you make it hot on radio.
Is that is it a hold on, let me look. Hold on. Nope. No, that's not a real Hawaiian shirt.
That's pretty great.
The Hawaiian shirts that come from Hawaii, they make them inside out. Did you know that? Did you?
I didn't.
Did you know that? They used to. I don't know if they still do. I've never been to Hawaii, but I'm told these things.
This is from the Washington and Lee bookstore, and it's a long way from Hawaii.
I can tell.
It's Vineyard Vines. It's Prepster, man.
This is like that scene from Caddyshack where Rodney Dangerfield's in the pro shop and he's just absolutely slamming on this hat. Oh, last time I saw a hat like that, it came with a bowl of soup. You know what I'm talking about? And then he turns around and Ted Knight's got the hat on. And he goes, oh, well, it looks great on you, though.
Yeah.
So it looks good on you, Cameron. So we'll talk more at length at 4:35 with Mike Sparks about this. Mike was sponsoring the sales tax-free gun safe bill, has for several years. It's passed year to year in the Tennessee General Assembly. Now, I want all of us to think about this slowly for a minute. So this has been wildly supported by Republicans because it's giving the people of Tennessee a tax break on something that many of us believe is a very good, useful, and functional item in the home that all of us should have.
Yes.
A place to keep our guns safely away from our youngsters, safely away from people who shouldn't have them. Anybody recognize this being in the news lately? On the same day, and I don't know why, and I'm going to figure it out because I think Mike indicated that there was some issue in the Senate. On the same day that Sheryl Crow and Amy Grant were petitioning the General Assembly to try to keep the guns that we have in the state of Tennessee safer and away from people who should not have them, it was told to me earlier today the sales tax-free gun safe bill is dead for this session. It will not pass this session. So I'm thinking, this is the epitome of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat from the jaws of victory. You know what I'm –
yeah.
This is something that we can – this was the inspiration of my sign today, right? Because apparently we can't even agree on the things that we all agree on.
Right.
I mean –
this is what happens when you have supermajorities. I want to be real clear about this. We were and are in no way prepared, and I'm going to say this about Republicans, to deal with a credible, what I would call Democratic threat, right? Where the Democrats are fired up and show up, and it totally caught us off guard. It absolutely, let's be honest about that. We were not prepared, and then trying to get all the ducks in a row to kind of figure out, well, how do we respond to this? Like that just didn't happen, and that's why. It's because if you have a supermajority, you're so used to just getting your way, and you don't even have to really think about it. This happens to Democrats in blue states, Republicans in red states. You need a good challenger to keep you sharp, and Republicans haven't had that in Tennessee.
And instead of unifying, and you know what, say what you will about how all of this shook out with the expulsions, and we can Monday morning quarterback that till the cows come home.
Sure.
But at this point, you've got these three knuckleheads meeting with the president of the United States. They're being hailed nationwide on mainstream media as conquering heroes.
Yes.
And they broke the rules. They broke essentially the laws that they agreed to and they agreed to abide. And I read an article in your favorite publication. I love blaming you for this stuff.
Thank you.
Tennessean, where they were arguing that their First Amendment rights got violated. Like, what?
They did not.
No, they did not. I know. And they're using Supreme Court decisions that have nothing to do with any of this to justify how they say that. I'm thinking, can we? It's only been 2.5 weeks, and the Republicans, it seems to me, and I'm not here to wag my finger at them, but they're allowing, or at least what I see is that the Democrats are changing the narrative before our very eyes in an effort to try to change history.
Yes. They're good at that. I mean, and this is a situation where Republicans need to realize that the story you tell is every bit as important as the work you do. Because, and in many cases more, because Justin Jones and Justin Pearson have been running around saying common sense gun control, without actually having anything to talk about. And they're now sort of saying, well, we're going to move forward with this. Well, they haven't moved previously. And I understand Pearson's relatively new, but Jones had ample opportunity to clarify this with legislative text and be the ardent advocate. He saw an opportunity for a stage and took it. And
yes, Justin Jones' response, and you might see some non-starter bills. I mean, and I'm sure that he's filed some of them by now.
Yes.
But, I mean, and these are non-starter bills like a ban on quote-unquote assault weapons or whatever, things that wouldn't even pass constitutional muster, much less pass in the state of Tennessee. He's doing what he's best at, apparently, and that is bringing in, child-sized coffins onto the floor of the House of Representatives. These are all just optical shows.
It's dramatic pageantry, and look, we've seen this in politics before. This is not relatively new, but what's happening here is that Republicans need to get their act together and say, here is what we're going to do. And say, this is our response, this is our game plan. What's happening is Governor Lee is running in this direction. Cameron Sexton, last time I checked, he was still there, but, I mean,
I don't know what he's doing now.
It's very quiet. I'm just not seeing a this is the direction that Republicans need to go. And I don't care if the answer is, well, we need to focus on the mental health component. We don't have consensus on guns, so we're going to do this piece about mental health counseling for young Tennesseans or something like that. There's options on the table.
Or we're not going to charge sales tax for those.
No, you can't go with the one that's on the table that's common sense. Nope.
I mean, because you could just throw that one and say, hey, this is a part of a package. Yes, we've done this before, but this is another way that we can tackle the possibility that people that shouldn't have their hands on guns get their hands on guns. This is another
I would
way
amend
to do
that and include all gun locks, gun safety. I mean, basically anything that's related to gun safety, done. Boom, God, let's go.
And suddenly that's off the table this year. And you're right. I know people are getting tired of me saying I'm the new guy, but I don't try to presume that I understand the way things were done before I got to the state of Tennessee. But I will say this, it was told to me, and it makes a lot of sense. Remember, what was it? Was it Godfather 1 or Godfather 2 where Tom got the boot and they needed a wartime?
You're older than me, so I don't really.
You don't know, do you?
No.
You guys remember. Tom got the boot. They needed, I hesitate to tell the story because I have a hard time saying concierge.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with that one. They need a wartime concierge. And you're a peacetime concierge. But we're in war, so we've got to have somebody that knows what to do. And it's like I feel that way in Tennessee that the Democrats declared war on you, at least from a public relations standpoint. And now it's time to push back. And a lot of what I hear on the Capitol steps is, man, I just wish the session would be done so we could all go home.
Yes, it is, and it is
fight. Fight!
Yellow-bellied surrender ponies.
Right?
I mean, this is what I'm seeing is this sort of like, I just want to get out of here. I'm tired of dealing with y'all. And Democrats, meanwhile, are like, we are going to create a miles-long chain of people. Now, I don't necessarily know what that does, but my point is they're organizing a mile-long chain of people. We can't even get legislators to legislate.
So I will, in defense of the Republicans, say this, that Democrats have it a lot easier when it comes to getting people to do nonsensical and ridiculous things just because they say to.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe me, go to a liberal rally and watch them. It is hilarious.
They just chant.
I mean, yeah, somebody says something and they
No
repeat
justice,
it.
no
And,
peace. No justice, no peace. Okay, we got it. What do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? Gun control, or whatever. And two, they have the majority of the media on their side. I mean, obviously, we're going to try to speak truth on Super Talk. And by the way, I understand that I have a particular point of view. I understand Cameron has a particular point of view. I understand you do too. And in this format, you get to speak as well.
Yeah.
Unlike these other formats where they present things that aren't so as being so, like they violated their First Amendment rights on the floor.
Are you sure, Matt? It's dangerous letting the people talk. You know that. The Democrats have made that clear to us that you have to have sanctioned spokespersons.
Until such time as they want to take over the body of the floor of the House of Representatives, and then, it's unconstitutional not to just let them do it.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Well, I've gotten just dog cussed in email from folks responding to my column on this topic saying, okay, and I asked them, when is it okay to interrupt legislative proceedings? Is it just when you want? Or is it we have to allow all disruptions of legislative proceedings? And you know what? They don't have an answer because there is no answer. You shouldn't disrupt legislative proceedings because that's how we sort through our disagreements. So if everybody can just essentially disrupt it indefinitely,
then nothing will get done.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Right.
You know what we should introduce in the legislature is the snapping. I really like the snapping.
The snap claps.
Yeah, you can't. Clapping is too much to a violent. Do you guys know this? Do y'all know this? That in really, really leftist circles, it is intrusive and considered somewhat of an act of violent behavior to clap because that is overwhelming the individual who's speaking. So instead, you don't clap. You snap your fingers.
That's so weird.
It's like we're beatniks. It's the 1950s or something.
We should wear all black and berets, Matt. We would pull that off excellently.
I also like. I mean, I've got to have some fun with this, otherwise I'll start crying. I also like the nature of these liberal get-togethers when, especially when they don't have megaphones. Like one person will speak and everyone else will repeat whatever the person said, and then they just keep doing it that way, which feels very, very 1984.
Well, it's interesting because I watched different assemblies of conservative types, and I have many friends on the left who I watched kind of their gatherings. And you are right. There's a lot of the one person chants, one person repeats on the Democratic side of things. And the Republican side, it's like one person says a thing, and then the other guy's like, screw you.
Well, and part of me applauds conservatives and libertarians for it because they believe in individual thought.
Yes.
They believe in thinking for themselves and coming to conclusions, but it also creates this horrible circular firing squad in which we're angry at each other instead of angry at the real enemy, which are these stupid Democrats that are making the death of children about themselves.
Yeah, this was the whole Williamson County can't even elect their own leadership in the Republican Party.
Don't you start it. Gary Humble's going to start calling me.
Circular firing squad.
It is 4:22 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. This is The Drive.
President Biden talking about the economy and mentioning House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's recent remarks today on the spending of this nation and the money news. What happened today on Wall Street? That and more, 4:30 right here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Every time Mac Morey gives us one of those teases, I think to myself, ooh, I really want to know what the news is
what's
going
he
to be.
talking about?
Why don't you just go ahead and do the news right now, but then you won't. You make us wait.
That's not what I think. I think what 40 to 50-year-old woman is just really excited to hear the sound of that man's voice. That's what I hear.
He is Cougar Chow.
He is.
Oh, gosh.
That is the truth.
Here we go.
I mean, you look at him. You got him up on the screen? Get him up on that. Get that 3-shot rocking.
Oh, gosh.
Come on, Mason.
No.
Let's put it up there. 615-737-9986 if you'd like to be a part of the show. Look at him. See him there? Got him there? Yeah, there he is.
We'll have to add in a cougar hotkey with just different cats. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thundercats.
Made with real bits of panther, so you know it's good. It's coming up at 4:35. If I remember to give Mason the man's telephone number, Representative Mike Sparks will tell us why we can't pass the simplest of legislation in the waning days of. I'm told that we are now in a period in the General Assembly called, and I was desperate to catch up to speed last year, and I did not hear this phrase, called flow motion. Have you heard this phrase?
Yeah, I've heard it. I don't really understand. I know they can't introduce new bills at this point without an override.
But they're speeding up the process by which bills go from committee to floor and get to a vote. And so because of that, several members said, well, I can't get too far away from the floor because the danger is that somebody would amend your bill or do something wanky to the bill that you don't want to happen. But, yeah, we're in not slow motion, flow motion.
Flow motion. Mm-hmm. Well, imagine Republicans were in charge and could do things the way they wanted.
Yeah.
That'd be weird.
Well, but it's not like they have a supermajority or anything.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a good – what? Wait, what?
Governor Bill Lee, it has been proclaimed by many media outlets, is invested in potentially considering or supporting what, some would call red flag laws.
Extreme protective order, whatever.
I don't – let me back up for a second. Did you get heartburn over what Jack said privately in that conversation?
Not really.
Because I know a lot of people wanted to parlay that into Jack Johnson really, really wants red flag laws, but he wants to fool the people into it. I think what Johnson said is correct, that term has come to mean something that conservatives do not believe they support.
Right.
And if you call it that, then many conservatives are immediately going to push back against it.
I had this conversation with he who shall not be named on Tuesday morning about the...
By the way, Gary Humble came on your show.
Yeah.
But he won't come on my show.
It may not be productive for him to come on this show.
That's what he told me.
But in this instance, I asked him very clearly, I said, well, the issue is like there's a lot of particularly suburban moms thinking about their kids that want to keep guns out of the hands of the severely mentally ill. And I said, I don't care what you call it, but like, can we have that conversation? And basically he said, no. And I said, well, okay, but there is no red flag law right now. There is no text of this law that we can review and say whether this is a clear violation of the Second Amendment or a good idea. It's just a word or a phrase, I should say. And he said, well, no, I'm against red flag laws offhand, regardless of what they actually say. And I said, well, what about the Inflation Reduction Act? It's had nothing to do with inflation on the federal level. And so if people just said, well, I'm for inflation reduction, so I'll support it, then that's dumb. You need to look at what's actually there.
Here's how I would, and I'm not trying to help Humble out at all, but here's what I would say, that I have yet to see any legislation classified as red flag laws that have satisfied my concern about every piece of legislation that I've seen that are classified as red flag laws, in so much as you are denying individuals their rights based on what you think they might do.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in that.
Yes, and I think that's fair. My question is, are there other categories when we talk about something, if we want to call it extreme protection order, red flag law, whatever, is there a way to temporarily say, hey, we are going to remove these rights there is sufficient due process here so that we can demonstrate there's a clear and present danger to themselves or others? Or is the answer, well, no, we just can't ever do that?
Well, and to that, and here's where the productive conversation comes in. To that, I would say, well, can't we already do that? Tell me how it's not already a part of the process that I could appeal to a court. I mean, do I have no ability as a parent to go to the courts and say, my 24-year-old is acting in a way that I believe he's a danger to himself, and I need to get him some help?
So there are laws that would allow you to have what amounts to an involuntary commitment, right? And those laws do exist. I don't know if you could go to a court and say,
remove guns from him.
Remove these guns from him,
because I feel like he's going to do something with the guns, or she's going to do something with the guns. No, that's the part of the conversation that we need to have, because I think if we knew they were going to do something, obviously all of us would agree.
Right.
But we don't.
You can't pre-know.
You can't pre-know. 432 Super Talk 99.7 WT, and I pre-know this. Cougar Chow's got the news.
Hey, 432, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 84 degrees and a sunny day in Music City right now. Weather and traffic in just a few minutes. President Biden talking about the economy today in Maryland and mentioning House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's recent remarks insisting on spending freezes and other deals his most conservative party members want to avoid a government default.
Mega Republicans in Congress are threatening to default on the national debt. The debt that took 230 years to accumulate overall. Unless we do what they say. They say they're going to default unless I agree to all these wacko notions they have. Default would be worse than totally irresponsible.
The president mentioned that America's not a deadbeat nation or a country that doesn't meet obligations. He also made it clear to Speaker McCarthy that, quote, how we should proceed to, he said, I made it clear to Speaker McCarthy about how we should proceed to settle our differences, end quote. And the money news, here's Daria Albinger.
From ABC News, Wall Street now. Stocks fell heading to the close as investors look over the latest earnings. The Dow gave up 80 points, the NASDAQ rose 4, and the S&P was off a fraction. Netflix weighed on the markets, falling almost 4%, a day after the company reported weaker than expected revenue. So far, most companies have been beating profit forecasts to clear a bar, which was set particularly low. That includes Tesla, which announced after the close its latest numbers were better than analyst expectations. If you've had a Facebook account at any time since May 24th of 2007, you can apply for a share of a $725 million privacy settlement parent company Meta's agreed to pay. It's to settle a lawsuit alleging the world's largest social media platform allowed millions of its users' personal information to be fed to Cambridge Analytica. That's a firm that supported Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather up next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and I'm proud that you are. My name is Matt Murphy. Get that tongue to work. In for Brian Wilson on the drive. Normally hearing me from noon until 3. I hope you're enjoying me from 3 until 7 o'clock on a day-to-day basis until at least Monday afternoon. Cameron Smith in with me this afternoon. He continues to thrill us with his acumen.
Thrill.
615-737-9986 is our telephone number. Coming up in about an hour, Representative Scott Desjardins will talk to us about debt ceilings and Alejandro Mayorkas earlier today on Capitol Hill getting absolutely destroyed by the Republicans.
Did not go well.
Did not. Although, Congressman Mark Green eventually, our own 7th Congressional District Congressman Mark Green, who is chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, eventually had to tell Marjorie Taylor Greene to just going back to her office.
She
cool
was
off.
a little intense for her, which is like a
a lot intense
on a 10 scale.
Yeah, I think what she couldn't do was just out and out call Alejandro Mayorkas a liar.
I think she did that. I was listening to it on the way in, and she asked a question and then said, reclaiming my time, you're a liar. I'm like,
awesome.
I just was waiting for her to go nanny, nanny, boo-boo or something like that.
And then she said, did you hear what she said to Swalwell? Eric Swalwell said something, and she retorted something along the lines of, well, you're a guy that had a clandestine affair with a Chinese spy named Fang Fang, and we all know it.
Well, there are consequences for your choices.
She's not wrong. All right, Representative Mike Sparks is with us. He's of the 49th District out of Rutherford County, and he's here to talk about one specific piece of legislation, but generally to tell us how it's going in this. It's an exciting time in the General Assembly, to say the least. Mike, good afternoon. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for the invite.
So talk what is flow? It's called flow motion, right? Are we in flow motion now? Is that what you guys are calling it?
We just voted for the $56.2 billion budget. I mean, we literally just voted for it 4 minutes ago.
Okay, so we've got a budget. It passed, I assume?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. It passed. It passed. I mean, there was some disappointments for me, as you know. My gun safe bill didn't get funded by the Senate, and I think we dropped the ball on that. It's sometimes a little disappointing, but one thing I've learned about politics, you don't always get what you want.
Is there a way to, and I want to talk the specifics for those who aren't aware of them in a moment, but I'm a little confused, and Mike, help me out. Why do we have to fund a piece of legislation that is about letting people keep their tax dollars? Why does that have to be funded in some way?
Well, they'll put a fiscal note on it, and that gun safe bill, the tax exemption, what they'll say with that fiscal note is we're going to forego about $420,000 of tax revenue, and so there's always a fiscal note with a bill. Sometimes there may not even be a note, but they still will look at the fiscal aspect of any legislation.
The impact on the budget.
Yes. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Right. I guess I'm obtuse. I was educated in Georgia publicly, Mike, so I'm a little slow on the uptake on these things. So you're anticipating the monetary revenue that you would have generated absent this bill, and you're charging that against the bill?
Well, I guess that's how fiscal review has historically done it. Anytime we have a tax cut, it's going to affect the budget because they've been dependent on that revenue stream. Because I've been harping on this, trying to get it passed, and it's too late. It's too late. Really disappointed in the Senate for not getting this bill passed. Mark, as you know, Mark Brassfield, owner of the Safe House, come up to testify yesterday, and we just kind of assumed it was going to pass. We passed it 2 years in a row. It's year to year, and Mark was ready to testify. Then we found out that the Senate kind of dropped the ball, so there was
What
no
do you
need
mean by
testimony.
that? What do you mean the Senate dropped the ball?
Well, they just didn't. It had a negative recommendation, and I'm not sure if it's because it said the word gun. It's about gun safes. Because I'd heard that they didn't want to take up any gun bills. So I can't really answer for them. I left a message for Jack Johnson, went by Bo Watson's office, Gardenhire's office, and others to try to talk to them. But looks like it was too late, and so we'll try again next year. And I'm hopeful. In fact, I've reached out to the governor's office. I'm hoping that the governor will just take it up. And
so there's
we'll
no opportunity to circle back through the Senate and get it through the Senate at this point.
I've texted everybody. I mean, I text the governor's people. I text our leadership. I've texted everybody, and it's like a Hail Mary pass. Really, Matt, if you call Jack Johnson personally, you could probably help get it done.
I've got him coming on the show tomorrow. He couldn't come on today, but I've got him coming on tomorrow. So I'll ask him. Because it would seem to me, and you're a better person to explain all of this, but it would seem to me that in this environment where there are a lot of concerned Tennesseans, rightly so, trying to figure out what we can do that we can all agree on can potentially make us safer in our homes, if we're all in agreement that the wrong people don't need to get their hands on guns, then this would seem to be a great way to incentivize people to keep their guns safer within their homes. It seems a no-brainer, but you're telling me it's not going to happen. It's fascinating how this could slip through the cracks.
Well, if folks in Rutherford County listen, this is why I get pissed off at government. Government's damn broken. It is broken. This is common sense right here, common sense. I just met with some folks that probably aren't as conservative or Republican as you or I, and this was on their agenda, safe storage of firearms. They're showing me 9,413 guns were stolen across the state in 2022. According to FBI, 5,301 guns were stolen out of cars. I mean, this is happening in Laverne, it's happening in Smyrna, it's happening in Memphis, it's happening in Nashville. It's a damn no-brainer, and this is why it's a good example of somebody not having common sense. I mean, Jack's got common sense. In my opinion, if Jack says, "Hey, we need to get this done," we can get it done. The House is willing to pass this. We had it passed today. I told you I've got my psych bed bill. We've got a mental health problem. Our ERs have been clogged. I've got a bill on that, and some lobbyists killed it. I mean, Phil Williams is not going to cover my psych bed bill. The ERs are full. What my bill would have done on the psych bed bill, there's a HERT system where they update the bed availability of like Trust Point, Rolling Hills. We had it worked out the hospitals. All of a sudden, some big lobbyists come in, and the bill got moved to next year. Thus, it's dead for this year. It's a damn no-brainer, man. It's a no-brainer. And then you see both these die. It's like it makes me just want to drop the F-bomb on 99.
Well, let's not do that, Mike Sparks.
We should not.
We should probably not do that one. But I understand. I mean, I can hear your frustration. Yeah.
Well, we share it. We share it because this is a time when Republicans are getting bludgeoned on gun issues, and this is
for not doing something, and this is something you could do.
This is something you could do.
It's a no. John Harris of Tennessee Firearms, Moms, what's it called? Moms Demand Action. I haven't talked to them about this bill, but here's something right in front of me. Safe storage, they're for it. All the psych mental health people that are working in that field are supportive of this psych bed bill. But here's the problem: what happens in government? People listen to lobbyists more than they listen to experts. They listen to lobbyists more than they listen to their constituents. And that's why we got a damn problem in this country right now.
Mike Sparks, our guest, he represents Rutherford County, District 49, talking about the failure, apparently, of a bill that would have made gun safes sales tax free in the state of Tennessee, a way to incentivize more people who own firearms to protect those things that protect them and their families by keeping them locked up. Makes perfect sense to me. It makes sense in the environment that we're currently in the aftermath of the Covenant school shooting. And for some reason, it was not funded. Maybe it's dead, maybe it's not. We'll see what we can do on our end, Mike. All we can do is draw awareness to it. And I guess the idea is to invite people to call their senators or their representatives if there's still time and encourage them to pass a piece of legislation that we can all agree on.
Or just call Jack Johnson.
Yes. Call Jack. Call your senators. I mean, call them. This is a big deal, and it's just frustrating as all get out for me. Because I'm listening to families. I mean, we've got a mental health crisis, and it ain't a question of if we're going to have another school shooting. It's just when.
I think that you're probably right. Nobody wants to hear that, but people are struggling right now. A lot of young people, real angry, and I think this is a great idea because a gun safe, gun locks, things like that stop and make people think for a minute, and it's a great idea. Love it.
Yes, and Mark, I don't know if you've reached out to Mark Brassfield with the Safe House. His sales are up. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's working. It's an incentive. Anytime you cut taxes like that, it's an incentive for folks to invest and to purchase. So it is very frustrating. I know it's frustrating for Mark as well.
Other than that, Mike, we're hearing conversation. I don't know how much of it is going on the actual floor of the House of Representatives about other measures. I know the governor is pushing an order of protection measure. Can we hold you for just a second to talk about that? Do you have to go vote or something?
I've got to get in here. I'm raising my hand to get them to vote with you.
No. Well, look,
I've got to get back on the floor, but I'd be willing to
Well, we'll talk
to you tomorrow.
Well, we'll talk offline. You go vote. You have to have that responsibility for the people of Rutherford County. We'll let you go do that, and we'll talk to you again. because there's much to be said about this order of protection, which I don't think is going anywhere in this session anyway. It's 4:50 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson on the drive. We've got 2 more hours to go. We have to say the sad goodbye to Cameron Smith.
It's quite sad.
You can read him in the Tennessee, and he's in conservative corner over there. You can also see him on Super Talk TV anytime you want, and occasionally you can hear him on the radio like this Friday.
Yes, 9 to noon.
How about that? A lot of
all the best words are happening then, too.
That's what I hear. What I'm told. I'll have to tune in and check that out. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you, Matt.
Hey, we've got your calls coming up. We've got Scott Desjardins coming up. We've got lots of things to discuss, to include Peter Doocy challenging Karine Jean-Pierre on the issue of the Covenant School parents and teachers and their invite to the White House, or lack thereof. That's to come on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Five o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Currently 84 degrees and that sun shining high in the mid-state. Expected to do so the rest of this week. Got a fire weather watch in effect from tomorrow at 11 p.m. That'll be in effect until 7 p.m. We'll have a relative humidity of anywhere from 18 to 22% tomorrow, so it's going to be hot and sweaty. Weather and traffic in just a few minutes. 2 more days, the Supreme Court issuing an administrative stay until Friday on its ruling on the attempts to revoke the FDA's approval of the abortion pill mifepristone. But Ann Flaherty says the case isn't just about women's reproductive rights.
The drug makers, they're really hoping for clarity on this. They say that this is not how the government should be doing business, injecting sort of uncertainty into to how drug makers work and develop drugs. They've been making the point all week that, who's going to bother to develop a drug, research it, spend millions of dollars to look into a drug if it could just become a political target.
President Biden delivered remarks at a union training facility in Maryland today as House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy unveiled a House GOP plan to raise the debt limit. Elizabeth Schulze has more from the White House.
Speaking to union workers in Maryland, President Biden tried to cast House Republicans as extreme in their plans to cut government spending.
Massive cuts in programs you count on. Massive benefit protected for those at the top.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy fired back at the president, accusing him of skipping town rather than sitting down to negotiate a deal on the debt ceiling. The two haven't met in person on that topic since February 1st.
Back in Nashville, the irritant that caused an emergency evacuation at B&A on Sunday has now been identified by officials as bear spray. It was in Concourse C that the noxious fumes were reported. It took just under 2 hours that day for the ground stop to be lifted and for the concourse to be fully reopened. TSA made a statement on the matter saying, quote, TSA takes its role in transportation security and this situation very seriously and is continuing to review details with our airport partners to ensure appropriate corrective actions are taken, end quote. And a call of explosion in Seattle caused a lot of activity near downtown. It happened this morning. Alex Stone brings us some details.
When medics arrived, a man had serious injuries to his hand, but the injuries were not life-threatening. Neighbors in his apartment reported an explosion in the basement area. Police say once they investigated, they found he had been holding fireworks that exploded. The bomb squad made sure there were no other dangerous fireworks in the apartment. Seattle police are investigating.
And right now in Tennessee, there are updates on that fatal I-65 North crash. It happened in Robertson County yesterday. One person was left dead after an already rear-ended semi-truck ran over that victim's vehicle. He was a 28-year-old man. The crash involved 5 vehicles in total. The tractor-trailer that initially started the multi-vehicle crash and the tractor-trailer that killed the man have charges pending. Tennessee Highway Patrol is continuing that investigation. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather upcoming. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
And a good afternoon, and it is 5:07. Hope you're doing well. Maybe you're in your car in traffic. Perhaps you're already at your home. Congratulations at your place of business. Hope things are going well there as well. It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. Matt Murphy and for Brian until 7 o'clock today and throughout the course of the week. Brian back on Monday. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can also find us on Talk TV. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Hello. Thank you for being there as well. Look at me. A face made for radio. How about that? 615-737-9986 is our telephone number. I give those numbers often and as quickly as possible just to keep you on your toes. Again, 615-737-9986. That is also the super text line. If you don't desire to call and turn a monologue into a dialogue, you can also reach us that way, and it's always good to hear from you. So I've got a couple of ways to go here. I've got the Don Lemon audio that I want to share with you, which is just absolutely delicious. We'll get into that in the next few moments. Don Lemon is attempted to have a grown-up conversation with a presidential candidate and failed miserably. That is on the way. Secondarily, we've got Governor Lee signing the transportation bill, which we've not talked about at length as of yet. We've mentioned it, obviously, in the newsroom, WTN's news department, on top of all of this legislation that's coming out of the end of the General Assembly. And Governor Bill Lee is now calling on gun reform measures that he's referring to as temporary order of protection that some are calling red flag laws. The tricky and difficult part of anything, forget calling it a red flag law. Call it anything you want. We have a very limited ability in the United States of America to involuntarily incarcerate people because of mental infirmity or disability or mental illness. There's very little ability for us to do this, but that ability exists. If we determine, and it doesn't exist in wide circles absent someone harming or attempting to harm themselves or harming or attempting to harm other people. In the United States of America, there was a time where we had mental institutions. And individuals, if so diagnosed by medical professionals, could be involuntarily incarcerated inside said mental institutions for an indeterminate amount of time. Those times are past. Now, if you'd like to have a discussion about bringing those times back, I think that's potentially worthwhile. But I do not believe that we will ever return wholesale to a time in America where individuals can be involuntarily incarcerated based on a mental diagnosis when they have not presented themselves as a harm to other people or themselves. The tricky part with denying individuals rights granted to them by God and presented by the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States is that you have to, in a precognitive way, determine that you know that someone is going to do harm to other people before they do. Now, in the case of Covenant School, maybe if we learned more information about the past history of this assailant and what she did or did not plan, what she did or did not say, what she was or was not going through from a mental stability standpoint, maybe one could make the case that we could have gone to a court of law. However, as it stands, can you get someone incarcerated because they present themselves as a danger to others? Yes, I think that's possible in Tennessee and across America. But can you take the half step? And this is what the governor's order of protection would potentially do. Can you take the half step of not incarcerating them, not suggesting that they're such a danger to themselves or to other people that they need to be inside of an institution? However, they are a danger enough that we're going to take their guns away for a temporary period of time. Governor Bill Lee, in what is being described as an 11th hour push, is backing legislation for an order of protection which would allow courts and law enforcement to temporarily remove firearms for people for up to 180 days. That's 6 months. if a judge finds a person poses a current and ongoing risk of serious harm to themselves or to others. It's as simple as this. And I hesitate to try to oversimplify or overcomplicate the issue. I'm trying to walk that fine line. Is it permissible for a court or a mental evaluator to determine that you don't get to own guns for a temporary period in time because they believe that you have some sort of psychosis? Or is that not permissible? Well, currently it is not permissible under the law. That's the question, whether or not we should make it permissible and whether or not it would do anything to prevent these types of shootings. This is where the goats can graze on it, right here. For 23 years, I've sat in a seat similar to this one, and for 23 years, we've seen these mass shootings, and for 23 years, we've talked about it. Invariably, the political left tells you that they want to take away your guns. They might not say it that way, but that's what they want to do. And today, they'll talk about assault rifles or assault weapons, and tomorrow, they'll talk about handguns. Before you know it, they'll talk, at first they'll talk about grandfathering things in, and before you know it, they'll talk about coming in and getting them. That's the way that creep works. But on the other side of the argument, I hear a lot of my conservative friends talking to me about mental health and mental illness, and they never really get down to what that means. Does it mean that we need to open up institutions again? Mental institutions. Facilities designed to, much like prisons, hold people in them that are mentally incapable of making reasonable decisions for themselves and potentially could present a harm to other people. Or are we trying to split the baby to a certain degree and say, well, we're not going to do that with regard to mental health, but we have to do something with regard to mental health? And then I need to ask you what that something is. Because I don't know what that something is. And I mean it, folks. I don't know what that something is because I value the Second Amendment. I value your ability to keep and bear arms, to protect yourself, your family, your property. I believe in it. And I do not trust, I'll go ahead and say it, I do not trust the medical community and what they will do with the sort of power that we're talking about. But then what do? Well, Governor Bill Lee this morning called for lawmakers to vote on the bill before finishing the current legislative session, saying we, quote, owe Tennesseans a vote in the wake of the Covenant school shooting. To be specific, he said, I'm proposing that we improve our state's law so that it protects more Tennesseans and reaches more individuals who are struggling and in need of mental health support. There's broad agreement that this is the right approach. It should be that simple, but sadly, it's not. In his video address, Lee then says political groups began drawing the battle lines before the bill was even completed. Lawmakers are now attempting to see whether or not they can pass anything before the session is done. Lee went on to say, these are the moments, and I didn't realize, I'm just reading this. I didn't realize it was a video address. Otherwise, I would play it for you. Maybe I can pull it up in a moment. These are the moments for which people of Tennessee elected us to listen and act. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is possible when we're talking about the safety of our children, our leaders, and teachers and innocent lives. The only thing standing in our way is politics on both sides of the aisle. The proposal does not include emergency ex parte hearings. Those are the mechanisms used by other states when determining emergency firearm revocation. The legislation, I'm just going to read it to you and let you know, just so you know what it says. I know some of you are against all of it, and I get that. It would allow law enforcement to file a court petition for a temporary mental health order if someone has threatened or attempted suicide or homicide or, quote, places another in reasonable fear of violent behavior and serious physical harm, end quote. If the order is granted, the court must require relevant mental health treatment. The bill would then demand a court hold a hearing between 3 and 5 days after the petition is received. In no event should the hearing be held more than 10 days after the petition is filed. Attorneys are written into the proposed bill. Those court-appointed attorneys would represent the respondent. The respondent would have a chance to challenge the allegations in a court of law. The person would then be required to undergo a mental health evaluation prior to the hearing. If the court finds an order should be issued, the respondent would then be required to, quote, terminate physical possession of all firearms within 48 hours and would also be blocked from purchasing firearms and ammunition for the length of the court order. And then it goes on to say the proposed measure would mirror existing legal framework found in Tennessee Code in other limited circumstances, including domestic violence. As Lee said, in Tennessee right now, if a husband threatens to hurt his wife, an order of protection would temporarily restrict his access to weapons to protect the spouse. If that same man threatens to shoot himself or a church or a mall, our proposal will provide the same level of protection to the broader public. I will say this. You are either against all red flag laws or you are not. And I don't know of a red flag law that I've read that has been more carefully constructed in order to attempt to protect the rights of the individual. You either, on the other side of that, believe that mentally ill people should not be able to possess guns, or they should. I know there are some Second Amendment absolutists, and I understand where you're coming from. I also understand that there are people that are dead today because a mentally ill person killed them a little over 3 weeks ago at the Covenant School. So I'm not going to be the guy that tells parents of the Covenant School students, hey, sorry, that's just the breaks. Nothing we can do. But maybe there isn't anything that we can do. It is 5:20 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
A school board meeting about to get underway in Rutherford County that they're going to vote on changing the school calendar for good in the name of safety. Plus, last year's baby formula has ended, but what's the aftermath and what other inspections need to happen to keep it from happening again? 5:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yes, indeed. It's The Drive. Matt Murphy and you. I'll get to your calls second to this, because then there's this. We now know that the Bullhorn Trio has been invited to the White House. The intrepid reporter Peter Ducey had this to ask of Karine Jean-Pierre earlier today during their daily press briefing. Listen in.
So Monday, you're going to have 3 of the lawmakers who protested
peacefully protested after the Nashville Covenant School shooting. Have any of the victims or the victims' families been invited to the White House?
I don't have anything to read out to you about any invite.
Why?
I just don't have anything at this time to read out to you any invite. What I can say to you right now is that the president is focused on getting things done.
Well, there you go. Just focused on getting things done, but they don't have anything on the victims or the victims' families or anyone else of that nature, particularly the police heroes that prevented further death. Just the 3 lawmakers that made it all about themselves. Isn't that nice? All right, talking mental illness and the governor's proposal on the order of protection. Some are calling them red flag laws. I'm curious your take. Jerry in Shelbyville. You're up, Jerry. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Jerry. Thank you for calling.
Hey, I was hoping to get you and Cameron, but I realized he had to take off. But just real quick, I wanted to say, speaking from the perspective of a parent of a child with mental illness, there's a lot of different things that I don't think we're considering. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at age 16. I've gone through every court system that there is between Chattanooga and Memphis. And I think the real problem is when the person gets into the system, and, we've done everything possible. I even took all the guns that I have in my home off site. I didn't even lock them in a safe. I took them out of the home. We done everything possible, and he was not allowed to have guns. There's processes in place that keep guns out of the hands of people that are mentally ill, and he still was able to commit a crime that using a knife and a vehicle. So I think guns are the last thing that we need to be thinking about. I think it's a great thing. We've always talked about it, gun safety and keeping your guns locked away. But, that's not the problem. The problem is mental illness. And we're relying on our court systems, our criminal court systems, to prosecute these people that have legitimate mental illnesses. And the best thing that we can do is take those people from the criminal justice system during their incarceration and have them evaluated. And when it is found to be that they are legitimately ill and need to be on medication, they're put on that medication, they're stabilized. But, the maximum time that a mental health facility in Tennessee can hold a person is 7 days. And I'm not saying that that's not a process that works. What doesn't work, where we're breaking down at, is when they leave that facility as an adult. I was able to manage my son's medication when he was a juvenile, but when he became an adult, when he was incarcerated, he was there for months for different things that, he'd done. And he was allowed to walk out of that jail after making bail or whatever, and then his next step was to go
Jerry,
to
I don't mean to rush. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. So what do you think? Do you think the answer is to increase the ability for mental institutions to hold these types of people?
Not necessarily. No, I think we need to monitor these people.
How do we do that?
You do that through the probation system.
Okay.
My son, when he committed the violent crime with the knife in the vehicle, he was out on probation, and he was actually within 2 weeks of being released.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, Jerry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to rush you, and I don't mean to be insensitive to your son's situation. It's just I want to get to as many as I can, and I can't solve your son's individual situation. I hope you understand. But I do hear you regarding mental health evaluation and the possibility of monitoring these folks a little more regularly. Jim is next in Clarksville. Jim, what is your thought on this?
Hey, man, I appreciate you touching my call.
Of course.
First off, if you've never had a gun put in your face, then you don't know what it's like. I've had 3 put in my face, people that robbed my business. Now, if you got that gun locked up, how am I going to defend myself? It's insane to think that if I've got a gun and I want protection, that I've got to go unlock it to protect myself. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I was looking at, not to interrupt you, Jim, I was looking at this Vanderbilt poll that they claimed was legit. I have a hard time believing it, where they said that half of the people in Tennessee believed that you should, if you own a gun in your home, lock it up and lock your ammunition up separately. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I understand locking it up to prevent kids from getting it, but what the hell good is my gun if somebody's breaking into my house, if I have to go get my gun, then go to a separate location, get the ammunition, get that out, load it? It's ridiculous.
Matt, thank you. I mean, that's my point. I mean, man, if you're sitting in a car and you see some guy running at you with a gun and he's saying he's going to shoot you, what you got to do, take it out of your glove box, you got to take the lock off, and then load it and get ready to shoot him. I mean, you're dead.
No, Jim, you don't do that. You have to get out of the car, get to the trunk, open up the trunk. That's where you find.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I'm with you. I mean, some of the ridiculous nature of the suggestions prevents the gun from doing its job, and that is to defend the people that it's designed to defend. We'll get to more of your calls coming up. Hang in there if you're able. I've got a conversation with Congressman Scott Desjardins coming up in a moment. That's right after the news. It is 5:31. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive.
.531, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. And, man, we got a hot week. 84 degrees right now in Nashville. That sun flying high. It'll do the same tomorrow. High of 86. And we've got a fire weather watch. It starts at 11 a.m. tomorrow until 7 p.m., and that's due to the heat and humidity. Plus, that'll all be paired with some winds up to gusts of up to 30 miles an hour. Weather and traffic in just 5 minutes. The Rutherford County School Board is meeting right now to vote on changing the school calendar in the name of safety. Channel 4's Lydia Fielder explains.
Item number 9 on tonight's agenda is to designate a day for school safety. So the Rutherford County School Board wants to make January 5th, 2024 an administrative day set aside for retraining. So the students are going to be on winter break still. Meanwhile, teachers and staff will be back in session. We talked to the director of schools, James Sullivan, about what this would look like. He says the idea is to revisit plans, focusing on controlling building access and going over school crisis procedures.
And that board meeting started about 2 minutes ago. We'll keep you updated with results from that board meeting right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Last year's baby formula shortage has ended, but the head of the FDA is telling Congress that the industry needs inspections. Andy Field with details.
The head of the FDA taking questions on baby formula at a Senate hearing and suggesting the industry could use more policing after last year's contamination-caused formula shortage.
I've been on the industry side, and when the industry is told you must do something, it actually does it because the penalties are very different.
The FDA Commissioner, Dr. Robert Califf, says baby formula contamination reporting is still, for now, voluntary.
And a crime story here in Tennessee, Fox 17 reporting that a former teacher at Putnam County School has been reported for possible inappropriate communication between a teacher and a student. The teacher in question abruptly resigned just before spring break, according to police. That investigation is expected to reach some sort of a resolution in the next 3 months. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. they're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up, because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
Keep that rocking and rolling. I'm going to play this over. This will be the nature of my first question to Representative Scott Desjardins. Listen to our boy, Alejandro Mayorkas.
It is my testimony that the border is secure, and we are working every day, day and night, to increase its security.
Does DHS have operational control of our entire border?
No, sir.
That was Alejandro Mayorkas. The second person you heard from was Congressman Mark Green, who asked the question, does our Border Patrol have operational control of the border? And Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz says, No, sir. To speak on this and other matters in Washington, D.C., we are pleased to welcome on the Drive hotline, as I sub in for Brian Wilson this afternoon and all week, Representative Scott Desjardins joins us. Representative, thanks for being here. Your time's valuable, and I appreciate you spending it with Middle Tennessee. Good afternoon, sir.
It's a pleasure to be on, Matt.
So we had our hearing of Homeland Security, and your colleague from Tennessee, Congressman Mark Green, doing a great job leading the proceedings there. And we have Alejandro Mayorkas telling us that the border is secure. Do you concur with the Homeland Security Secretary's analysis that we have a secure southern border, Scott?
I don't know how the guy sleeps at night. It boggles my mind that we're this far into the Biden administration with 5 to 7 million illegal crossings, gotaways, fentanyl problems, and this guy can sit there and answer questions the way he does in both the Senate and the House. I mean, he truly has no conscience, and he absolutely needs to resign. And you can't deny the facts. You watch the news any given night, and you see people streaming in like rows of ants coming across the border, and so for him to somehow create this facade and continue to spew these lies is just unfathomable.
The number that I have seen is 5 million illegal crossings into the United States of America since Joe Biden has been president of the United States, and it's a fascinating figure. It's beyond, I think, the population of Indianapolis, Indiana. One presumes, Scott, and I don't want to presume too much because I know what happens when you do. That becomes an assumption that this is an intentional act on the part of the Biden administration. Do you believe that this is intentional, that they do not fully secure the border and allow these individuals into the country?
Yeah, I think it's got to be to this extent. There's no way. This is unprecedented. There's never been these kind of numbers. There's always been illegal border crossings. And it's just like the mainstream media tends to ignore it. The president acts like the border is secure. Mayorkas acts like it's secure. And I don't know who they think they're fooling, but clearly when you put it in perspective, Tennessee has about 7 million people. We guess 5 million. It's probably more than that. We can repopulate the entire state of Tennessee, which has come across illegally. And these folks are being spread throughout the country. There's several measures that were in place with Title 42 and Remain in Mexico that they're just ignoring. And I truly, of all the things that have been going wrong up here in Washington, that one, it just hits us in the face every day.
Well, and obviously it's not just the individuals coming across. It's also what they're bringing with them, to include fentanyl, which is a major killer across the United States of America. And, the Biden administration likes to focus on mass shootings. They like to focus on gun death. And that's fine. We might disagree with solutions along those lines. They talk about the children and how we must do everything that we can to protect the children, yet they are conspicuously silent, Scott, when it comes to fentanyl death in America.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's anywhere 70 to 100,000 deaths per year, which is equivalent to all the soldiers we've lost in every war since World War II, not counting World War II, but forward. And that's occurring every single year. And it's going to be a major election issue. There's so many things that are going wrong with the country right now that we could spend the entire segment on the border. But Mayorkas coming before the committees and being exposed to the American people for what he is, hopefully we'll see some results come out of this.
Our guest is Congressman Scott Desjardins, talking about a number of issues before the halls of Congress in the United States House of Representatives specifically. I think you, if I'm not mistaken, talked on floor debate today about a bill. Well, let me begin the conversation asking it this way. Scott, are you a drinking man? Will you have a beer on occasion?
I've been known to have a beer.
What about a Bud Light? Would you have a cold Bud Light with me right now?
Bud Light probably did us the biggest favor in this war on transgender that we've seen so far, or if you want to call it the wokeism. We actually have an anti-woke caucus up here that was started by Representative Jim Banks, and I've been attending those meetings. And that was a collective middle finger to Budweiser when they tried to force that transgender sponsor down their throat. So, I mean, I actually thank Bud Light for doing that, because there's little sections across the country. It can be the Riley Gaines and the transgender athletes, which we addressed on the floor today, or it can be drag queen shows in schools, or it can be the wokeness in the military and things that we've been battling there. But wokeism is an incredible problem across this country. It's kind of like the new racism. People cannot really prove systemic racism anymore, so now we have wokeism. And in the past, if you wanted to watch RuPaul on TV, the drag queen 10, 20 years ago, you could watch it if you liked it and your thing and it entertained you, that was fine. If you didn't get criticized for not liking it. But the new game now is that they will shame you publicly in any way they can if you speak out against any of the LGBTQ, transgender philosophies, and it's getting out of hand, and we have to rise up and say no. What happened in the state capitol is related, where the representatives decided to bring bullhorns onto the House floor to lead a riot. Basically, in Washington, if you were a Republican, that would be an insurrection. But in Tennessee, the Biden administration is making these three lawmakers heroes. They've invited those three lawmakers to the White House. Kamala Harris, speaking of the border, who's our border czar and is supposed to be visiting the border, which she hasn't been able to find yet, did find her way to Nashville last week to shake the hands of these people and others. And to glorify bad behavior in a legislative body like the Biden administration is doing is another form of wokeism. And it's just unbelievable. And I don't mean to be schizophrenic on you and jump in all different directions, but it all ties in. And we're in a fight for the survival of our country as we know it if we don't get a handle on this. We can't apologize for being right. I mean, it was right to punish those lawmakers, but they were treated like heroes, and we need to have a counteroffensive when the national media descends upon Nashville the way they did and are continuing to do.
Well, amen. And I could not have said it better, Scott, and I'm glad that you're speaking up on the matter, because we got a good bit of silence in the aftermath of these lawmakers attempting to turn the tables on what was rightly decided by the speaker and the rest of the body, in that they were expelled from the body after breaking the rules. And I'm glad that you're speaking up on the matter. A lot to unpack there. I'm still reeling from the fact that there is an anti-woke caucus. I love that. Yeah. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. No. Well, on armed services, we deal with it as we try to put together our military to fight against our adversaries, whether it be Russia or Iran or North Korea or China with the Taiwan threat that's going on. And we have a recruitment problem in the military. Nobody wants to join the military. And a big part of it was the way they were treated because of COVID misconceptions. But also, there's no clarity in our mission. The Biden administration, as early as today in a hearing, was trying to tell me that the president has been very clear on his messaging with what the end game in Ukraine is. And no one really knows what the end game is. China is very clear on what they plan to do with Taiwan. President Biden actually on 3 occasions said that we're going to defend Taiwan, only to have the White House walk it back. I asked the question yesterday, who's running the show here? Is it the commander-in-chief? Is it unelected bureaucrats? Is it the Pentagon? Is it the DOJ? But why would you want to join a military that they're teaching you, one, that America's bad, that we should feel guilty for the way we behaved in the past, and we don't know clearly what our objectives are. We don't know why we're defending Taiwan. Most people don't. Most people don't really understand what's going on in Ukraine. If there was some clarity, if a president would go on the TV and say to America, here's what our objective is, this is what we all need to unite behind, then you can make a clear decision. But right now, our military's busy teaching our soldiers not how to fight and be lethal, but how to be sensitive. And I'm guaranteeing you, China and Russia, that's who they want to fight. They want to fight against an army that is being taught to be ashamed of their own country.
I want to circle back to wokeism and how it affects young female athletes in just a moment. But since you brought up Ukraine, it occurs to me that based on the leak, and you can tell me where you are in terms of this leaker and what should be done with this individual. But one thing we did learn is that the United States military is well aware that the Ukrainian fighters are not doing nearly as well as the national mainstream media want you to believe. And you know what? Applaud them for doing what they can do to try to defend their country. So be it. But we're being told Joe Biden and his administration tells us that they will not sit down at a table attempting to broker a peace that involves giving Russia pieces of Ukraine. That's all well and good, but it seems to me that we're not going to get a positive outcome for the Ukrainian people unless the United States of America commits military troops on the ground. And that's something that I don't think that Americans have an appetite for. So Joe Biden seems to be allowing Ukrainian soldiers and citizens to be slaughtered for no good gain or no positive result without attempting at least to sit down and figure out if there can be a peace on the table?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, deterrence probably could have worked. I honestly think if Trump had been president, Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. I visited Ukraine in 2017 when this buildup was occurring, when we were training their soldiers. I was in Kyiv. I was in Lviv where we were training. I was out in Dnipro and got a pretty good grasp of what was going on. It's not like we didn't see it coming. And then they talk about not wanting to provoke Putin. They didn't want to escalate things. If we take a strong stance, he may invade the country. Well, we didn't take a strong stance. He invaded the country because he knew that the Biden administration was weak. And now we face a similar threat with China. The ambiguity, they love to talk about strategic ambiguity in the military. Right now, the general thought is Xi is not going into Taiwan because he's not sure if the United States is going to back Taiwan. Well, if that's what's keeping him from going, if we say we are going to back Taiwan, we get our allies to back Taiwan, well, does that provoke him? So all this concern of provocation to me is just weakness and appeasement. America used to have a strong national policy, and we've lost that. We lost it with Obama. We regained it to some extent with Trump, and we're weak right now. I think our enemies and adversaries can just smell it on us, and it's a bad situation to be in. So, yeah, I don't blame the American people for being concerned about what's happening in Ukraine and what the end game is when we ask those questions and we can't get an answer to it. As far as like trying to pivot back to the leak, we just came from a classified briefing here that was given to all of Congress, which generally I'll just say was a pretty worthless briefing. There was nothing that I heard but double talk that they take this very seriously and it shouldn't have happened and we're going to be more careful. Obviously, I can't go into details, but frankly, there wasn't much there that we didn't already know and you don't already know. This 21-year-old, as far as why he had that level of clearance and what his intentions were is still being under investigation. But the bottom line is that it shows that probably a lot of things are overclassified and there's probably a lot of lack of transparency. But my job, being on the Armed Services Committee, is to go to classified briefings, get good information that you can't get or people in my district can't get, and then come back and give my opinion and hope that you trust me that we're doing the right thing. Some of these leaks gave me question whether I'm getting good information in the classified briefings. And so it's concerning to me that I want people to rely on me and have faith in my judgment when I come back and talk about Ukraine and Russia or China and Taiwan. But I want to know that what I'm getting is true and honest, transparent information. So there's a lot of culture problems here right now that need to be corrected in a hurry because I guarantee you China has a plan. They wanted to dominate the world by 2050. They started this about 2000. What they've been able to achieve over the past couple decades is astounding, whether it's in space with hypersonic weapons. And I mean, this is very real. And anyone, Trump talked about China in 16. People almost mocked him for it. He's spot on right. That is our biggest threat right now. It's not going away. And we better toughen up and realize how we're going to deal with it because what we're doing in the military right now, the way we're messaging to the American people, I don't blame people for not wanting to join the Army or join the military services right now because there is no clear position on national policy.
Well, no, and you're right. And we're desperately short on recruits right now, as you are most certainly well aware. Well, Scott, I'm out of time now, but I do want to applaud you on taking to the floor and defending those K through 12 young girls who want to compete and compete fairly and not against transgender athletes. Thank you for that, and we'll continue the line of discussion. And it's always a wealth of information when you come on, and we do appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Take care. There's Scott Desjardins joining us for a few good minutes. Man, it's just an absolute gusher of information when Scott comes on. It's 5:53 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
6:02. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 83 degrees right now in Nashville. A sunny day, and it shall be again tomorrow. We got a fire weather watch starting at 11, and it'll go until 7. Humidity, high heat up to 86 degrees, plus some wind gusts of 30 miles an hour. Complete weather traffic coming up about 5 minutes. The 21-year-old Massachusetts National Guardsman accused of leaking national defense information online made a court appearance in a Boston federal court today for a preliminary waiver hearing. Jack Douglas Teixeira is charged with unauthorized retention and transmission of national defense information of classified documents. Teixeira waived a hearing on his detention status pending trial until a new hearing next month. And at the same time, intelligence agencies briefed senators today on the leak of secret classified information that was disseminated over the internet, harming national security and possibly hampering future intelligence gathering. Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida spoke after the Capitol hearing.
That a 21-year-old airman first class is able to disclose information that has created domestic political problems for key allies, undermine our relationship with those allies, and potentially cost us access to future key intelligence, I think it's stunning.
Rubio also said, quote, "You cannot conduct oversight over agencies that only tell you what they want you to know. That's not real oversight," end quote. Right now in the volunteer state, Tyree Nichols' family has officially filed a lawsuit against the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department, along with the individual officers involved in the beating, which killed him in January. It's a $500 million federal civil lawsuit. And 2 more days, that's what the Supreme Court is issuing on an administrative stay until Friday on its ruling in the attempts to revoke the FDA's approval of the abortion pill, mifepristone. Ann Flaherty says the case isn't just about women's reproductive rights.
The drug makers, they're really hoping for clarity on this. They say that this is not how the government should be doing business, injecting sort of uncertainty into to how drug makers work and develop drugs. They've been making the point all week that, who's going to bother to develop a drug, research it, spend millions of dollars to look into a drug if it could just become a political target.
Right now in Tennessee, News 2 says that every Murfreesboro police officer is expected to be equipped with an automated external defibrillator, or an AED. Cardiac arrest is the cause of thousands of deaths in the U.S., and this should be able to help save some lives. As a part of their in-service training, Murfreesboro officers undergo CPR and AED training every 2 years. According to the police department, the goal is to issue all uniformed officers an AED by the end of the year. And a recall of a popular pickup. Daria Albinger gives us the story.
Stellantis is recalling more than 130,000 Dodge Ram 1500 pickups. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says it's because the engine could shut down while driving. Included are 2021 models equipped with 5.7L e-torque engines. Owners will be notified starting in June to take their vehicles to the dealer, which will update the powertrain control module calibration software. Stellantis says it's caused at least one accident, but so far, nobody's been injured as a result of the problem.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A good evening to you. 6:09. Hope the drive home is going well, if that's what you be doing. We be driving liberals crazy. Brian Wilson not here today. Matt Murphy in for Brian this week. It's my episode 322 with you in the Nashville community, Middle Tennessee, throughout. We thank you for being with us. We appreciate you so much. I appreciate you so much. I know Mason does as well. He's behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible.
Doing my utter best.
Well, you're doing a great job.
I appreciate it.
You sound great. I sound so-so. I think I'm 70.
There's a reason you're the host and I'm not.
70% from over on this side.
I'm getting 80 through here.
Well, that's good. That's probably through the processing that you're so diligently doing. Have you seen, by the way, I was running down some headlines, and I saw one of the headlines that I noted was that authorities have captured a bear that reportedly killed a jogger. Which I always note, when animals do things that animals do, they always kill the animal, which is annoying to me because a shark is just going to be a shark, an alligator is going to be an alligator, a bear is going to be a bear. And I get, they got a taste for blood, Murphy. But this reminded me, did you see the video of the guy like laying in the hammock under his deck and the bear just comes up to the door?
Yeah, just walks up on his back porch and they make eye contact.
And he just, Bill Cosby said it back in the day. First you say it, then you do it. And that's what I would have done. Now, if you've not seen the video, this guy is laying in his hammock underneath his carport. He looks like he's just chilling, got a breeze going.
Just relaxing,
having a good time. And a bear, it's a Ring door camera. And the bear is coming to the door. Like it's about to go inside of his house to, I don't know.
Do chores for the afternoon, basically.
Yeah, rummage around, maybe vacuum the carpets, grab himself a sandwich out of the fridge. Who knows?
Do the dishes afterwards.
Yeah, why not? And the guy looks up and just freezes. And then the bear turns around and freezes. And it's kind of like a little...
You're not supposed to be here situation.
Little Mexican standoff, as they used to call it back in the day. And then the bear just bolts. It's pretty funny if you've not seen it. Equally funny, watching Marjorie Taylor Greene roast Eric Swalwell to his face in testimony earlier today, talking about his alleged sexual relationship with a Chinese spy named Fing Fang or Fang Fang or whatever her name is. Speaking of bumbling, John Fetterman bumbled his way through his opening statement. It was the first time he was back in the U.S. Senate in some time. We've got that story. The Supreme Court extended a hold on abortion pill restrictions at least until this Friday. So there's that going on in national and international news. We also have a story involving CNN that's so delicious. I cannot wait to share some of the audio with you. We'll do that coming up in just a couple of minutes. But many of you have been holding on to talk about mental illness and what to do about it in the state of Tennessee. By now, and we've been talking about it throughout the course of the afternoon, really throughout the day on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Governor Bill Lee is attempting to have the Legislative General Assembly pass some piece of mental illness or firearm legislation prior to the General Assembly adjourning. He is backing legislation for what he calls an order of protection law. We went through the complete complexity of the law. It would basically allow courts and law enforcement to temporarily remove firearms from people for up to 180 days if a judge finds the person poses a current and ongoing risk of serious harm to themselves or to others. And I'm getting a sense of where you folks are on it. Right now, I would say it's decidedly leaning toward no on this matter. But enough from me. What say you? 615-737-9986. By the way, before I get to you, Jason is exactly right. I may die in one of many ways, Jason writes. But jogging and being eaten by a bear is not the way I'm going out. I might get eaten by a bear.
I would say that's a pretty... I think it's a pretty common fear that people have, for sure.
I might get eaten by. I had an obsession finding that I'm a little macabre in this respect. For a hot minute, remember what was he called? Grizzly Man. You know what I'm talking about? This guy thought that he could commune with the bears. I mean, he was convinced that he had a special kind of grizzly bear whisperer thing going on that he didn't really have going on.
Yeah, you were talking about, I thought you, for some reason in my mind, went straight to Bear Grylls. I was like, that's not the same guy.
Oh, and some people in the audience, they're thinking that I was going Grizzly Adams, which is a much, much more dated reference. No, this was a guy, I think I'm right, Grizzly Man, which he accidentally recorded his own death. He had a video camera. He would go out into the wilderness. He would commune with the bears. He would be way too close to them. He got to the point where he became very, very comfortable associating with the bears. And one day he had his video camera going, and a bear came into his camp, and you do not see it, but you hear it. And it is not available anywhere online because I looked. I don't know why I would do that, but I did. I was fascinated with someone that thought that they could get this close to a wild animal when obviously that wild animal is eventually going to turn on you and eat you.
Yeah, it says him and his girlfriend.
Oh, yeah, they killed it. The bear killed his girlfriend, too. Wow. That's right. Oh, yeah, it's bad. It's just bad.
I mean, I don't know if you saw it, the movie Cocaine Bear that came out.
I did not, but I heard it was surprisingly good.
It was good, but it's a lot. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, is it gory?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I think I laughed a little too hard at some parts. It was like comedic takedowns and stuff like that.
Comedic death?
Yeah. But it's a bear on a rampage. It's a bear on a rampage for sure.
It's a bear on cocaine, it's my understanding.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Premise being cocaine falls in the woods, bear gets a hold of the cocaine, then it gets good to him.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I think, like, like in movies, you see those huge bricks of cocaine. I think it ingests probably a good 12 of those throughout the entire movie.
Okay.
For itself.
Okay.
I was like, that's like over the span of like
amount of
a day and a half.
Healthy amount of cocaine.
Like, yeah, just a little bit.
I don't know how that would actually affect a bear, but that's pretty solid. And we're being told by Glenn on the super text line that the reason the bear ate the jogger, the bear's doctor told him that he needed to start eating healthier. Hey-o! Let's talk on a more serious note with Hank in Clarksville, who has a thought on Governor Bill Lee and Bill Lee's proposal regarding a temporary order of protection. Hello, Hank.
Hey, Matt. First of all, I would like to ask Governor Lee which law is going to prevent murder. I don't give a darn how strict the laws are. Look at Chicago, L.A., D.C., New York. And then I want you to ask Senator Jack Johnson tomorrow when he's on your show why, when Tennessee has a $2 billion surplus every year, that we could not fund 5, 10, or 15 million to reduce the time it takes to resolve these rape kits.
No, it's a great question, and apparently that was not fun. You're right to bring this up. Apparently the rape kit money was not included in the budget that was passed today.
No, sir, it was not. And just for the record, if you ever see me jogging or running, there is something really bad coming behind me. But no, a bear is not going to eat me unless he can take 17 10-millimeter rounds. And I'll leave it at that, brother. Have a great day.
Well, and let me say this before you go, Larry Hank, that if you and I are
so you know who it is.
If you and I are together, I don't have to outrun a bear.
Well, you ain't going to outrun me, brother, because I'm going to shoot you in the kneecap.
That's a pretty good strategy. Don't try to shoot the bear. Just shoot me. And then I'm food for the bear and you get away. Yeah, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. It is a shame. One wonders, and I will ask Jack Johnson on this question. Scott Spicky will be on with us tomorrow as well. These are regulars for me during my normal slot between noon and 3. And there is a possibility, and I say a vague possibility, that we might be hearing from the governor's office at some point this week, and I'm hopeful of that. I got my fingers crossed. Are we simply trying to get out of the General Assembly so quickly that we couldn't include the money for the rape kits? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Unless I'm missing something. We have a backlog of rape kits that is, what, a year long? People are not getting justice. Women in the state of Tennessee have been raped, and we can't determine the DNA within the rape kit, potentially to apprehend the suspect in question because of a backlog of these kits. We have money, yet we can't fund this. Unless I'm missing the issue here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either, Larry. Thank you for bringing it up. Let's see who's next. A lot of you have been holding on. David is next up in Mount Juliet. Hey, David, how are you?
What's going on, big guy?
What's
Thank
up,
you for
man?
my call.
Of
I'll
course.
be quick because I know you're short on time. What's going on right now, I see in a lot of different areas, is people have let their education exceed their ability to learn. No law is going to stop what's going on. And I'm going to say, I've dealt with a lot of what we'll call them touch people. Not a one of them ever admitted to me that they had a problem. It was always somebody else's problem, your problem. Now, I'm going to prove that to you. I had a friend of mine, they had trouble, had an issue, got to spend a month at Vanderbilt getting straightened out. Got their medication straight and everything. 4 days after they got out, they was back to the same old way, and I asked them, what are you doing out? You're not right. You know what he looked at me and said? He looked me dead in the eye and said, simple. I told them what they wanted to hear, and that's why I'm out. These people are smart. You may think they're touched or whatever, but they got intellect, and no law's going to stop anybody from doing anything, but no, the gun laws and stuff, that's not it, and the mental health laws are not it. It's about the individuals. Got to keep an eye on them. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for the call. That's a succinct point and well made. I appreciate you, David. We'll continue the conversation momentarily at 621. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hope that drive's going well. Let's find out from the roadways and et cetera back in a moment on Super Talk. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. Thank you for being with us this afternoon, evening, 6:25. Brian back Monday. Vivek Ramaswamy was on CNN this morning with Don Lemon, Poppy Harlow, and Don Lemon promptly embarrassed himself. I'll have the audio for you in about 10 minutes on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Discussing red flag laws, we continue to talk about the possibility of the Tennessee legislature passing something. Here's my prediction, folks. Regardless of where you are on this issue, I do not believe that anything's passing this year. Not with regard to orders of protection. Whether it's considered next year remains to be seen. There are too many questions about the effectiveness of said laws. There are also major questions about how far state and local authorities will go utilizing the law to prevent you from owning or possessing handguns, or long guns for that matter. That's my prediction. What do you think about it? Adam is next. Hey, Adam, how are you?
Hey, good. Been a while. Anyhow, here's my thought on the red flag law.
Yes, sir.
Pretty much I'm against them. However, I thought about, is there a way? This is the only way that I would go with it. If you had, people that are already NRA folks. Now, I don't own a gun. I'm not a big fan of guns, but I'm a huge fan of the Second Amendment. I just don't feel comfortable around them. And if you had a group, a committee, somebody other than a judge that could make a decision on such a matter, then I would be for it. But I've seen too much corruption in this state. I've been here a lot longer than you, and seen things not work right in the child, the foster care system, the child, what is that, child, whatchamacallit system where they take your kids away, and on the other end of it with elder care. And and judges are elected. So I just, I'd have to see, the only way I would be for, and I don't trust anybody. I don't trust doctors. I don't trust flight attendants. They got power crazy when they, during COVID. So anyhow, that's kind of my take on things. It would have to be people that are very pro-gun. And it would have to be a committee, not just an individual person, and they would have to vote, not unanimously, but majority, that this person should have their firearms taken away for a period of time, whatever that period may be. However,
almost like a judgment by a jury of one's peers as opposed to a judge.
Right, but somebody that's very pro, they have to be really pro. They have to be like you, how you feel about guns. And I, without getting into the details, I really do know a lot about what I speak as far as going back to the folks that spoke about mental illness and so forth, and I really do. And that man about telling them what they want to hear, he's right. And, they're really, it's a real tough one. I think the smart.
No, it is because and I want to make sure. And Adam, thank you for the call. I've got to run. I've got to get to as many as I possibly can. I want to make sure that all of you listening understand. I'm sensitive to the other side of this matter, right? We want to protect our Second Amendment rights, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have mothers and fathers that just buried children because of an insane person who used a gun to kill them. Now, there's nothing suggesting that an insane person would not have used a different type of weapon if a gun was not available, but a gun was available. So what we are doing is an exercise in which we explore whether or not there is a way to identify these individuals, to flag them, without harming or endangering our rights per the Second Amendment of the Constitution. Real quick, Max is next in Springfield. Before we get to news, I know Max waiting back there. Max, good afternoon. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you are, sir.
Let me put you on.
Uh-oh. Well, I think I lost him there. Max, we lost you. I'm sorry we did, but as soon as you dropped, another phone call started coming in, so it precluded your ability to do so. So maybe we'll get you back. We got a loaded bank of phone calls. It is 6:31 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
ST997. That's what we'll call it. That's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you so much for being around, Matt Murphy, and you until 7 o'clock tonight. The great one, Mark Levin, at that time. I'm in for Brian Wilson. Brian back next week. Normally, I'm on from noon until 3. So if you have other things to do between noon and 3 and you've not had a chance to listen to my show, this is kind of what you get from noon until 3. And I would encourage you, if your job precludes you from listening to the show, then please find other employment and listen daily from noon until 3. Priorities. 615-737-9986. I was going to audio with Vivek Ramaswamy and John Lemon. I promise I'm going to that. It is delicious. You'll love it. Don Lemon has a meltdown. But Max had called, and he dropped. A lot of you are on the line, but I want to get to Max real quick because I feel bad for you, Max. Turn your radio down there, Max, and let's talk.
But Max had called, and he dropped. A lot of you are on the line, but I want to get to Max real quick because I feel bad for you, Max. Turn your radio down there, Max, and let's talk.
Okay. Hold on just 1 minute.
Okay, Max, I cannot hold on just 1 minute. I've got to move along. I can't wait on you because we're doing a radio show. So you get ready. When you're ready, we'll get back to you. I'll tell Mason to check in with you and just make sure he's got his radio down when we get back to him. In the meantime, I'm gonna go to Cecil in Smyrna. Hey, Cecil, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm quick rolling this landing gear down.
No, man, you're good.
I'm against any kind of laws. I'm just like you. I'm afraid that, they'll take an arm, they don't want a body. They'll start infringing upon the basic rights of people to own guns just by doing laws. All this is being, generated, actually stimulated by the shootings that's taking place in school. We can solve the situation with the shootings in the school. That deranged person that shot that glass out, that showed us a major issue right there that we can address. We can start installing glass and stuff that won't be so easy to be accessible and start putting metal detectors in with kids entering the schools. That'll solve the problem right there. You won't have any more school shootings. They'll take care of all that.
Well spoken, Cecil, and I understand what you're saying. I also understand that if, I don't want to be put in a position of defending red flag laws because I don't defend red flag laws. I want to be clear on that. I don't believe that they've proven themselves to be effective, and I do believe that individual rights matter and mean something. At the same time, if I got a couple of guns strapped to my back and I want to shoot up a school, wouldn't I just blow through a metal detector and start firing away? Then this discussion about red flag laws and firearms completely misses the point. If mental illness is the problem, then mental illness is what needs to be identified. Guns don't kill people, people do. A person who is mentally ill and is a danger to themselves or others is the problem in that scenario. They're not only dangerous with a gun, they're dangerous with a car, dangerous with a bomb, they're simply dangerous people. Red flag laws eliminate due process, much like the assumption of illness during COVID-19 and the widespread testing of individuals without symptoms for disease. Red flag laws assume someone is guilty of a crime they've not yet committed. Well, then what do you do? So you're suggesting that we need to identify the mental illness. Then tell me what that process looks like. If you're saying it's mental, I understand that. That is what you have just said, 7721, is the crux of the argument that I'm trying to present to you. Then what do you do about mentally ill people? How do you give them due process, and at what point do you take their guns away? Is there a way to identify mental illness? There are people that are on psychotropic drugs. There are people that are on drugs that's for psychosis. And the question is, do those people get a gun? Or should there be a provision that prevents them from having a gun? In the meantime, there's this. It's good enough that I want to share it with you. I know that many of you want to talk about red flag laws, and I want to get to each of you. Vivek Ramaswamy is running for president of the United States. Ramaswamy had spoken at the National Rifle Association days prior to making an appearance with Poppy Harlow and Don Lemon on the CNN morning show that no one watches. Because I know you did not see it live, because no one watches this show, I share this delicious piece for you. Now, it starts with Poppy questioning about the NRA.
I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party, then as in now, wanted to put them back in chains.
Then as in now, that's quite an accusation about the current Democratic Party. Who and what were you referring to?
I was referring to Joe Biden and his expression of wanting to put them back in chains, dating back to Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society was one of the greatest misnomers in American political history, where even back then in the 1960s, 70% plus of black kids were born into two-parent homes. Today, that number is less than 30% in the opposite direction. The very policies that we implemented in this country in the name of helping black Americans have actually been disastrous for black Americans and all Americans. And I think that that's something that we need to wake up to.
In 1865, you were talking about the black codes, right?
That's right.
Enacted to make it a crime for a black person to carry a gun in the
Exactly.
South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic change? What are you saying?
By the way, Poppy Harlow is either dumb or, well, maybe just ignorant. Joe Biden in 2012, while campaigning as vice president of the United States of America, said that Mitt Romney wanted to, quote, speaking to a black audience, wanted to, quote, put y'all back in chains, end quote. Joe Biden spoke to groups of black Americans and repeatedly said that the Republican Party wanted to put y'all back in chains. That is the reference Vivek Ramaswamy's making.
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party.
Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding black
Lyndon
Americans
Johnson's
back.
the war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular, his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family, where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home. Guess what you get? You get what you pay for. And I think it's been really bad for the black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
Do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox
Oh,
News.
it's fine. We have time.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially consider and using the Civil War to talk about black Americans. That war was not fought for black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for black.
All right, so I want to play a game of stop and go with you. Don Lemon just said that the Civil War was not fought so that black people could have guns. Is the Second Amendment a part of our Bill of Rights? Yes. Were black people afforded equal rights as slaves? Of course not. Was the Civil War in part fought in an effort to see free states and not slave? I mean, come on, man.
People to have freedoms in this country. Yeah. Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad
but that
part
wasn't
about
fought for black people to have guns. I think.
Actually, you know, funny fact is, black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we
still
learned.
aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
And you live in this country, then you can disagree with me, but we're not.
Did you hear what Don Lemon just said? This is fascinating. Don Lemon would be fired by any other media organization, maybe even MSNBC. He said, when you have black skin, you can tell me this, but you don't. In other words, I'm black, you're not, I win.
You mentioned in there that
I
we have
disagree.
three different shades
Don, I
of
think we have to be
melanin
able to
here.
talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that, compare that to 1865 and 1964,
I think for you to compare it to
absolutely
1865 and
have equal rights in
1964
this
is
country.
actually, I think it's insulting to black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit here and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong. What
part of the history was wrong?
What part of the history was wrong? That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns.
You're making Vivek Ramaswamy masterfully has Don Lemon saying that the Civil War was not fought for black people or their rights, when it has been a basic liberal argument for the last 100 and however many years that the Civil War was all about slavery. It was not all about slavery, but slavery was a component.
The Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns and for black people to have.
The Civil War was fought for black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that even after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms.
To reduce it in a speech at the NRA to say you're making people think, or you're trying to say that black people to get guns, that was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a
that's
fact.
Reductive.
It's not
and
reductive,
I think it's
Don.
insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was
black
part
people,
of what secured
hang on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear.
Okay, so Don Lemon gets mad, and he knows he's losing the argument. And they talk in his ear, right? They're telling him, you got to get a break, you've got to do this, sometimes like Mason does to me. And he's mad, so he lashes out, stop talking in my ear, I can't hold the thought.
So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again?
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They
That's
were
a
not
fact.
secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not, you are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to
And you
happen
know how they got
the
it?
Civil War
They got their
and
Second Amendment
Reconstruction.
rights, and they actually got the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role
absolutely,
in
they
that.
trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not.
By the way, they did. Don Lemon has no idea what he's talking about.
NRA did not play a big role.
This is just historical fact.
It's
but
not
Don,
historical fact.
The part that I
Just
find
because you say it's historical fact.
The part that I find
historical
insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have
the
a different
freedoms
point
that
of view.
black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without
shouldn't
me
express your
regarding
views,
you as a
but I think
black
it's
man,
insulting that
but
you're
me
sitting
regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
That you're
That's what I think we
here,
should see.
whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me.
Whatever ethnicity you are.
Whatever ethnicity I am,
about
I'll
what
tell
it's like to be black in
Whatever
America.
ethnicity I am, I'll tell
sorry.
you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
Oh, it's just destruction. It's destruction. It's a fatality. Vivek Ramaswamy, what a great moment for him, and what another embarrassing moment for Don Lemon. I'll try to get to you if I can. A lot of folks holding, and I apologize. Lots to get to on today's show. We'll be back in just a moment. Winding down the drive, no Brian Wilson. As we've mentioned, he'll be back on Monday. I'm here tomorrow, and I'm here on Friday, and I cannot wait for both. That's going to wind it down. You know what? So much to get to and so little time. Did you see where Jalen Hurts got $255 million for 5 years? Quarterback for the Eagles? I was going to get to that story. At some point, are we paying our sports stars too much? I think so. I think so. All right. That's going to wrap it up for us. The great one, Mark Levin, is back. Dan Mandis in Nashville's Morning News early tomorrow morning. And then a cavalcade of stars and whatnot until 3 o'clock, and I get here with the drive. Until then, have a great evening, folks. So long.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.